And we're live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to do a little community live stream session. You might notice there's a sunspot. It actually looks kind of cool, but I guess when I stream at this hour, at this time of the year, that's what's going to happen. But if you stay tuned, you'll get to watch the sunset reflect off the TV screen behind the Galilee Mountains. So stay tuned for that. I imagine the picture quality will just continue to clear up as the stream goes on. I don't really know what the topic of today's discussion will be. We're kind of just going to open it up to the community. Community members can ask questions, share thoughts, provide feedback, and we'll see where it goes. If somebody's viewing this on YouTube, Twitter, or one of the other platforms it's streamed to, you can find a description either in my bio or in the description of this video if you want to join. And with that, feel free to raise your hand if anybody wants to join. And I'm hearing that we still have that background noise, so hold on. Okay, there we go. The audio should be better, but I might be sweating, so that's the trade-off. MB's asking why the chill room and lounge is... Let me actually share my screen so those streaming can see at least what I'm interacting with right now. Cool. So we're working really hard to build as meaningful and unique an experience for all community members as possible. And there's an inherent challenge when there's a conversation that doesn't have any facilitation, that it allows for, or it enables abuse and personal attacks. It allows for some people to just dominate the conversation and not let others speak. So we still don't have a way to have a high quality, free flowing conversation unless we heavily moderate who's allowed to speak and who isn't. So the stage requires facilitation and it allows us to really control the conversation. We still have voice channels in the separate circles, but not in the town square. That way, if whoever moderates a circle can decide how they want those conversations to go, if they want to be free flowing, and if they want there to be personal attacks there, that's their choice. But the town square is where everyone has access to. So for us, it's important that people who are joining our community and they see a conversation, they tune in, that it's not a shit show, to put it lightly, that it's a high quality conversation. So we don't know how to do that. Although we did put the chill room back for some time, but we're still deciding what we want to do. Adam says maybe people can give us ideas. Yeah, I'm definitely open to that. And if somebody wants to come on stage, just raise your hand. We'll bring you on. Just keep in mind this is being live streamed, so don't say anything you don't want your parents to hear or for your communities to discover. But yeah, MB, do you understand that challenge? And if you have a potential solution, we'd love to hear. We just don't really know how to go about that. I also wanted to announce that today I hired somebody to help with booking and outreach. So we're going to have a lot more interesting guests, both on this channel and in Discord. Shout out to Scott G. Scott's been a longtime viewer, and when I put out a message that I'm looking for someone, he reached out and had some great ideas. So we're about to take our content game to whole new levels. And with that, if there's someone you'd like to see, join the Discord for conversation, or even two people that you'd love to see debate one another. That's also, we're going to be hosting more debates as well. So let us know. So I'm saying maybe the solution is more rooms that people can disperse when they feel like the conversation is dominated or hostility is arising. I guess the challenge with that is those people dominating the conversation would follow along. Right. It's an interesting idea. It might help, but I could see the same problems arising. Also, like last week, we had a fair bit of people leave the server, and a lot of them just joined. They joined for a few minutes, and then they left shortly after. And we reach out to them for feedback to understand why they're leaving. And most don't respond, but my thought is that they come in, they join a VC, the energy's not great, and then like, okay, this just isn't for me. So I think, I think, and again, this is speculating, but I think it's having somewhat of an impact. Adam's saying limit the number of room switches per hour. I'm not sure I understand that, Adam. You want to explain? MB, what's up?
What's up, Adar?
Good. How's it going?
Good. So I was thinking on some of the other servers, like the big servers on Discord, people are able to create rooms. Like there's a bot that allows you to create a room. So if I create, for example, a room or a VC, I can control that VC. Like I can control how many people can be in that VC. I can control the topic of that VC. And I essentially have like mod powers. So it would be like, so if me and Al felt like the conversation in another VC was getting bad, I could create a room and I could drag him in or tell him to come, and then we could basically like have our conversation.
And
if other people join and interrupt, I can mute them or kick them or whatever.
So it gives you guys mod powers over that room. Okay, that's an interesting solution. There's still
mod powers only over that
room. Yeah. Adam, what do you think about that? That's a pretty cool idea. I don't know if it solves the problem entirely, but I think it's worth trying. And it will be more similar to how we're going to do it on platform, right? On the HeadOn platform. The idea is that anyone can create a room. But the question is which rooms get pushed out by the algorithm and which don't. Adam, welcome to the stream. I could tell you're in one of those WeWork booths.
I am.
Cool.
And we have, is Beata here? No. You see, she's over there testing the AI in the other room.
Okay, let's go. Get her in here.
She's been feeding the AI the conversation that you had with Mordechai. Yeah, to see how it reacts to it. It's been very interesting to watch. I like the idea that MB said. I think you and I spoke about something a little similar, not identical, but similar. I think there could be like, what I'm trying to design for is almost like a Darwinian environment where very good styles of moderation just end up doing well because people just naturally gravitate towards those spaces. And then the people that create healthy spaces are the ones that the algorithm promotes. Right. So
yeah.
As opposed to people that are just saying radicalizing things and polarizing things and just getting people's reaction. No. It's the people that modify, that create engaging spaces. And I think we might be able to pull this off with something like what MB was just saying.
Cool.
If you manage a space, if you create a space, the question is what happens? Are these spaces persistent? Right? Like, do they remain the moment you step away? Or if so, does it just shift to another person that ends up being kind of like the person in command? There's different ways.
Yeah, so the way that it works there's a server called Politics on Discord. The way that it works there is if I create a VC now, that VC remains even if I leave the room. I can add mods to that VC, so I could make Al a mod. And then if I leave, Al will be able to moderate the room. And once the room is empty, it disappears. But the next time that I click create room, it still has like the same settings saved. So it would still have Al as a mod, and it would still have the same like room name. I'd have to change it.
I say we give it a shot and see how it goes. Yeah. Just to give some viewers context, we're not just building an awesome community, we're also building a platform called HeadOn. And it's a platform designed to bring people from opposing viewpoints together for conversations. The idea is to build different AI tools that help people ultimately find common ground. So that's where a lot of this product language comes from, that we're not just a community that likes to talk about things. We're actually working on something far, far grander. So yeah, let's give that a shot. Al, I see you hopped on. You want to chime in?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, I was gonna say we definitely need like 2 rooms with clear defined standards, because if somebody is in one of the rooms that they're we're supposed to be cordial and no screaming, no cursing, and they're engaged in that, we could tell them, listen, there's a room for that. If you want to do that, go to that room. And I'm sure the consensus in that room would probably chime in and say, yeah, this is not the place for this kind of behavior. But if we only have one room, it's like anything goes. You know what I mean? So I definitely think we need like 2 rooms at the least.
Right. So this does bring up an interesting challenge that might arise regardless, because our goal is to not need to do moderation ourselves. But imagine a situation where, so we could always have, there could be a chill room and a debate space. Let's just say 2 rooms. One's just for chill, chit chat, whatever. The other's for debating. Now, let's say somebody who's just acting in bad faith and ruining the conversation just follows people to whatever room they go to. But then there's mods there, right? They have mod privileges so they can then, right. So Al, the problem with having 2 rooms that always exist is that you could have a situation where there's no mods in the room and there's no way to stop abuse or just, unsavory conduct. So it almost makes sense to have no rooms and just let people create them, so there's always a mod.
But do you think if you have 2 rooms, you don't think the people can police themselves, like the majority? Like if one person is clearly a bad apple, I think the majority would just say, yeah, listen, this is not the place for that. Go to the other room if you want to engage in that. You don't think that can happen?
I think it would probably work currently at the size we're at now, but I don't see that working at like true scale. And when we have 24 hours straight of conversation in multiple rooms, you're always going to have these bad actors. Some people are going to come in just for the sake of trolling, and I think one day we'll have AI tools that can just automate moderation in a seamless way that we can avoid that. And as Adam said, incentivize good moderation by those who are moderating well. Their rooms will be the most popular. Yeah, I mean, we could give it a shot.
I was just thinking, if there's a way, like in the Jubilee style format, when like people can kind of have a chance to vote you out, maybe put you in a timeout if you're like dominating the conversation or whatever. I don't know if that's possible in Discord.
I would also require moderation. There's a timeout feature. I'll tell you another challenge. I think at this scale it could work, but sometimes if there's people in a conversation that are just, even if it's in the debate space, let's say you have one chill room, one debate space. Let's say the debate space is active, but the vibe there isn't good. Somebody joins the server. That's the only thing they see that's available. So they enter, they're like, not for me, bye. We still want to create a situation where what happens in Town Square, that kind of represents, it's meant to set an example of what's possible in terms of conversation about difficult topics. So that's the reservation. Like whatever happens on the circle, stays in the circle. The circle's like Vegas, anything goes. But the Town Square, that's like your family dinner, Shabbat dinner with family. You got a certain level of conduct, It's not Vegas.
But Adar, maybe could it be that what we're doing, okay, it feels like we have 2 directions. One direction, or at least 2. One is that you empower individuals to become very good creators of these spaces, right? That's for anybody. That means every room has a moderator, and any person can be that moderator. So that's one direction. The second direction seems to be what Al is saying: empower the community to become a better community, so that they can self-police, right? And perhaps you're right that if we were to have 1 million people today, that might not scale because the community has not yet built up those muscles for how to self-police. But could it be that gradual growth, right, in a very slow kind of like maturing of a community can essentially replicate the DNA of what we have right now if we were to give the entire community control, right? Like if you're saying that today, if we were to have that lounge or the chill room and the community itself can self-police and can say, you know what, now you're in the fighting room, okay, go to the Shabbat room or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, or the other way around. If we make sure that if the community itself becomes really good at doing that, perhaps there's a way that we can kind of inculcate that type of norm even in a growing community. You see what I mean?
Right. It all depends. Not if you're not okay with some amount of churn, because there will be churn caused by just that concept. There's no way to have like a free-for-all room without strong moderation that won't trigger people to the point where they rage quit. So yeah, we could do it, but it will.
No, it just means that we have to have spaces where their trolling is fine, right? Like where people expect that as the norm for those rooms.
Right. Give them a place to go, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So the question, is that done on a circle level or is it done in the town square? That's the question.
Well, it's just the concept of the town. It isn't a town. It's just every space. You can enter any space. You just know what to expect. You can go into the gutter. Sometimes you want to be in the gutter. It's okay. We have the gutter for you too. That's open. But or you can go to places that very high expectations or whatever. That's fine too. And just that the community itself is sorting itself out.
Yeah. Maybe name the room, bring the popcorn. Sometimes I feel like for, listening to a good fight, you know what I mean? So
I'm down to try it. We just need to see how we would enforce it. Because again, if people don't have mod privileges, then somebody doesn't need to abide by the values of the room, But let's try. One can be bring the popcorn. That's hilarious.
Yeah, bring the popcorn. And Justin and Noam are going at it. I don't have a problem with it, because I know exactly what to expect when I go into that room. So.
Okay, let's give it a shot. Should we? So we'll keep one chill room and one bring the popcorn. Is that what we vote? And we just create a culture. But I don't even see how this translates to the product, Adam. It seems like an interesting Discord solution, but how do you see this translating to product? Adam, you might be frozen. Let's see. Abstract says, what about a culture where those who are new to sit back for a few times before taking up space? Yeah, but I'm not even sure that it's necessarily new members are the problem. There's just always going to be personality types that come in. Some will be new, some will be veterans, so Tricky saying Adam is so intrigued, he's stunned. That's funny. Lama saying you can treat your featured rooms differently, and a featured room can be the first room or only a new member can see. Interesting. Okay. Should we move to just straight Israel-Palestine stuff? We started with something nice and lighthearted, some good products. All right, so guys, we're giving it a shot. Chill room. I'm asking everybody here to enforce it. There's no personal attacks, no yelling, no bad vibes in the chill room. If it gets to fighting energy, you bring the popcorn, you go there, and then you can do whatever you want there. Cool. So let's see. Let's do some Israel-Palestine stuff. I haven't been seeing the news, but okay, we're seeing a report: 20 Gazans died of starvation over the past 2 days. Let's see where this report's coming from. It is true that the famine is starting to set in. Perhaps not quite famine, but the food insecurity is certainly increasing. 2 children died a few days ago from malnutrition. From what I recently learned just through looking into this, there's different stages of food insecurity. Stage 5 is famine. It seems like most of Gazans are probably stage 3 and 4, maybe some are entering stage 5, those who are dying. But it seems like we're on the brink of a famine if we can't increase food going in. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been a complete failure, which isn't so surprising, but it has not worked. Let's see where this reported. Ministry of Health said 20 people died in Gaza. Okay. Their daily reporting is actually generally on point when Ministry of Health puts out daily reports. Not all of them. Some of their daily reports have later been discovered to not quite be as they described it. But for most of the times, the reporting is quite on point. We know their fatality list that we talk about often, that's verifiable, so that can be relied on. But there's a way to cross-check this with open sources, so you can see obituaries and stuff. So the 2 children that died the other day, we saw their online obituaries. At that point, that's as confirmed as it can get, right? Yeah, and supposedly there's stockpiles of food. There's warehouses outside of Gaza in Sinai that can feed all of Gaza for months, and it's not being allowed in. I guess we'll see what happens. Ibn Saifi, you're saying, did you see an image of the body, Muhammad al-Sawafi? It was horrifying. No, but I could pull it up. Is that someone who was... let's see. How do you spell it? Sawafi. Oh, damn. Okay, I'm not going to show this just to not... there's a serious trigger warning that would need to come with this. So a person with special needs has died of malnutrition. Damn. So that's another thing. You know, people are saying, but what? I saw a Gazan, I saw one market that had food, or I see overweight Gazans. Famine does not hit everybody equally. That's just not how it works. You have some Gazan families that have more money, so they have money, so they could afford food. Others that are closer to the aid distribution site, so it's easier for them to get the daily aid. And then you have others that don't, are secluded, or let's say, there was an elderly woman the other day who seems just bone thin now, and she's taking refuge in one of the hospitals, and she can't walk and pick up aid every day, so she's not getting enough food. So famine does not hit everybody equally, but it seems like we're hitting a pretty critical point. And dying is not the only thing. It's malnourished children. It affects them the rest of their lives. It creates all sorts of other disorders like cognitive decline, right? So Gazan children are not getting enough food. This will affect their IQ forever, and it'll make it harder for the next generation of Gazans to build the beautiful society they deserve to live in. So it's the toll is so much grander than we're people make it out to be, or so much greater than just the 20, 30, 40 people dying of malnutrition. But there's no reason for anybody to die of malnutrition. This is a human-created famine. Let's see what else we have. Polls, coalition crisis, our elections in Israel imminent. Okay, yeah. Recent polling shows Netanyahu will not have enough to form a coalition if elections were tomorrow. So that's, on one hand, good news. It shows that despite all the bombings, Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Gaza, it wasn't enough. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Bibi together again. The scary part about this is that, I guess, I'll remove the Discord now until somebody hops on. But I guess the problematic part, or the scary part about Netanyahu not having enough support to form a coalition is that it seems like he's more likely to continue aggression because that's the only play he has to try to get the polling up. But at this point, if after the military victory over Iran and Hezbollah wasn't enough to convince the Israeli population that they still want him, then he's done. It's time to step down and ride off into the sunset. And by ride off in the sunset, I mean straight over to The Hague. Let's do it, my guy. You got this. Sunny FX, of course, just doing my small part. We will keep raising awareness until the humanitarian crisis is over and until from the river to the sea, all the people are free. Until then, we'll keep doing this work. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, there's a protest in Tel Aviv. They called an emergency protest to protest the famine. Standing together, put that on. I recently got added to their group chat, so now that I've been back in Israel for a few months, I decided I'm going to get more involved with some of the local activism. Not just sit here in my cozy chair and speak to people, but I'm actually going to get out to the street. I wanted to go to the Gaza border. They were doing that, but I don't know if they're doing it anymore, so we'll see. But I might go to one this Friday. If I do, maybe I'll do a live stream from there just to kind of report on what's going on. And as you guys can see, the sunset is beginning to set. Or the sun is beginning to set. Hold on. So you guys get to watch it on the TV while I get to actually watch it. Not trying to brag, but, low-key flex. General march to Gaza planned this Friday. Oh, Nikias, thanks for letting me know. Can you send me a link to that? Can you send me a link? Beata, what is this room about? It's about whatever we want it to be about. The future is in our hands. So in terms of, I see Deepen is asking, is Bibi going to be forced to call an election eventually? Well, he is having some problem with his the ultra-Orthodox coalition members, both Shas and what's the other party? I don't want to speak from ignorance, but there's two ultra-Orthodox parties which have either decided to leave the coalition or are threatening to leave because they're forcing Haredi conscription, which essentially means that the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community that currently doesn't serve in the IDF, they're trying to force them to serve. And that's not okay with these parties. So his coalition might break down. If not, he'll be in power until elections next year. Next year will be the natural election timeline if he can maintain the coalition, but his coalition is on the verge of collapse. Let's see. We'll see. We'll read this article on it. We'll do a deeper dive. And if anybody wants to hop on, just raise your hand. This is a free-flowing chat. Let's see. The ultra-Orthodox parties exit Netanyahu's coalition. Israel now has a minority government. After 21 months of war in Gaza and 12 days of war with Iran, does the Prime Minister and his Jewish far-right allies want to go to the ballot box? Here's what you need to know as the polls and new parties proliferate. Last week saw a 1-2 punch to Israel's government. First, the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism party bolted from the coalition and from the government. Then later in the week, in a smooth sequence that looked well rehearsed, the Mizrahi ultra-Orthodox party Shas announced its exit. The coalition lost its 67-seat majority out of 120 Knesset seats and tumbled to 49-seat minority government. Israel's election seismograph spiked again, but it's a jumpy, erratic line, more like a heart monitor than an upward graph. Just a few days after these walkouts, the biggest party drama since government was established in 2022, the probability of early elections has already subsided once again for now. So did Netanyahu's government fall, or has it survived? Does this mean elections are imminent? What do the polls say about how they might turn out? The short answer is we don't know, but here's a short list of what you need to know. 2 early predictions. Let me actually pull up this article to give more of a visual experience. Okay. Two early predictions of early elections. Ever since the Hamas attack on October 7th, predictions of early elections in Israel have always been too early. Just a few weeks before the current coalition drama, the country was awash with expectations that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would cash in on the perceived triumph of Israel's war with Iran in June in order to call snap elections. That didn't happen. The waves of electoral speculation go back well over the year. The common trope after October 7th was this government was done. i.e. that when the initial shock and military campaign settled, Israel would go into elections and boot the failed leadership out. Okay, do we want to read this whole thing? No, we're not going to read this whole thing, but in short, the final word as ever is caution. No matter how stable these polls trends have been about summer 2024, nothing's impossible and everything can still change. Polls excel at reading the past and the present, not predicting the future. That's a cool line. If at any stage someone tells you the next election will definitely see scenario XYZ, run away. Okay, cool. Still too early to tell. We have right here, Mobad53 says, I really enjoyed the bit I watched. Super cool. You're doing great. And I'd love to share some tips on growing your channel. Feel free to add me on Discord. Dense08. So Mo, this sounds like a generic message, like you're a bot, but if you're sincere, you could reach out to me. There's a link to my Discord in my bio. I'll drop one in chat just so you have one, but it comes off as a little bit of spammy, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Reach out. I just sent you a link. Okay, yeah. Oh, cool. I see. Oh, this is a YouTube video, Nick. Yes. Let's oh, this is a long stream. Okay. So you saw it there. Maybe I'll reach out to them. Okay. I've actually been meaning to have those guys on the show. They're the what's their other channel? The Hebrew Canaanites, right? Is that what they do? They seem to do cool stuff. I haven't watched any of their content really, but they seem legit. Let's see. Scott Gidger is asking. Scott, I don't know if you saw, but I gave everybody, I gave you a shout out at the beginning and told them that we'll be working together. So here you are in the comment section. Do you think Bibi government will attack Iran again? Do you think their ultimate goal is regime change? Well, yeah, that would be the ultimate win for Israel. Netanyahu would love to achieve regime change in Iran. I just don't think there's any way to reasonably do that. If it was easy to do, it would have been done already. That's why during the what they're calling the 12-day war, everyone's like, oh, we're on the verge of regime change. They're talking about Reza going in there, the Prince of Iran, and it just was so unrealistic to think that he was just going to be able to march in there and be the leader again. And it seems now the hardliners have cracked down more on their population. They cracked down on the Iranian Jewish community. The by far most likely form of regime change is a coup. But that's not, that's by the IRGC. That's not going to be some like secular liberal government, right? That'll just be. It's interesting. Normally, when we have a military rule, it's normally secular military rule, like Sisi in Egypt. But this will actually be an Islamist military rule. Have we had that? That'd be interesting. Who knows? But that's the most likely regime change, not the actual Ayatollah and the IRGC both collapsing, and somehow you get a democracy. No one has laid out a path to do that unless it's like full-on war, boots on the ground, take Iran over, kind of like what the U.S. did in Iraq. But that's not going to happen, or very unlikely to happen. So to your question, will Netanyahu attack Iran again? Well, I actually saw it speculated that this was perhaps a leak from a cabinet meeting, that Israel's preparing for long-term war with Iran. So it's not over. It'll be a few days here and there, every few months. We feel like we could sustain their attacks, so we'll sustain them, and we'll just keep them weak. It seems like that's a likely strategy that Netanyahu will deploy, but I'm not sure that'll save him at this point. I'm not sure anything can save him. Well, I don't know if I should say anything, but maybe if Hamas steps down from power and we get back the rest of the hostages alive, maybe that. But all that's very unlikely. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so there's been a lot of requests for the Hebrew Canaanite guys I'm seeing, both from here, Nomad and people. Okay, we'll do that. Lama says, if you watched our latest one, they're talking about getting food physically to Gaza from Israel. Yeah, that's what Nikias just sent above, so we'll do that. They've decided to leave Israel. Okay, I can understand why people are doing that. Will Bibi go to jail? Not if Trump has any say in it. I don't know. I never looked so deeply into his. If you're talking about for like the domestic charges, I've never looked too deeply into how serious that is. He should be sent to the Hague though, if there's justice. If for a war criminal of this level to die a free man, that's an injustice. Yeah, but he won't be the first, and he likely won't be the last to not pay the consequences. Well, there's different ways to pay the consequences, right? Reputation. He'll go down in history as a war criminal and very likely the worst leader in Jewish history, and we have a damn long history. So there will be consequences, more of a cosmic justice than actually him going to prison. Because for him to go to the Hague, someone will need to make an arrest. Who's going to arrest him? Like, he could get arrested within Israel, but for domestic charges. But to send to the international court, I don't know about that. Doesn't seem likely. Shadow Disc is asking, are there any reporters who have sourcing within Hamas similar to Drop Site News, not necessarily in English? Yeah, I mean, there's some amount of Gazan reporters who are still alive. Many are no longer alive, but there still are people, yeah. Muhammad Shahida, he does primarily English, but he's also supposedly close to them. I could pull up a list if you're interested. What are the odds that the individuals who live cast their war crimes would end up in The Hague? You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're going to try to charge, because the war crimes that we're seeing videotaped by actual IDF soldiers are relatively minor, right? They're not gonna upload the horrific stuff. Like if they do something absolutely horrific, like an execution, you know, or something of that nature, there's no chance they're uploading that to social media. So we do have an abundance, numerous videos, probably well over 100 at this point, of IDF soldiers doing things like looting, burning civilian infrastructure. We've seen them destroy medical infrastructure, abusing prisoners. We've seen. Is that enough for The Hague to charge someone? Perhaps. I don't think I know enough about this to know, but I think a more likely consequence, and we're already seeing this, is that soldiers who served in Gaza are getting arrested in other countries around the world. An IDF soldier was just arrested in Belgium, right? We have, I saw a quote from a Canadian IDF soldier saying, "I'm scared to go home because of the repercussions." So there's certainly a consequence on that front, that IDF soldiers no longer have freedom of movement, which is kind of ironic, is it not? What's interesting is how far this will spill, right? So right now, IDF soldiers who served in Gaza seem to be the targets, but how far will that spill? Will it be anybody who ever served in the IDF? Will I be at risk in the future of traveling places because I was in the IDF? Interesting. Haven't thought about it much. What I do know for certain, though, is the IDF has, let's say, always had a bad reputation in some circles and a great reputation in others. But the number of people who view the IDF as evil today is at a record high. So there very well likely still may be consequence that anybody who ever served in the IDF will pay, because people associate IDF with the worst thing ever, right? So that's definitely something that might affect me in my life and many others. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Sorry, I get calls once in a while. That was actually a Palestinian friend who called me. Let's see what we have. Drop site. Sunny FX says drop site news often brings voices from within Gaza. So does Electronic Intifada. Yep. And Gray Zone, I believe, as well. Sunny's saying it wasn't one soldier. 2 soldiers got arrested in Belgium. Shachar saying, I wonder if Dr. Abu Sitta will agree to be interviewed by Adar one day. So I actually don't know who that is, but Scott, if you're still watching, maybe let's write that name down, Dr. Abu Sitta, and see if we can get him on. The generalizing association with the IDF is like associating all Jews with Israel. Not exactly. Maybe to some extent, Noam, but these are members of an institution. So it's people, and you could make the case that because it's compulsory service, they were coerced into it and not by their own free will. Perhaps, but there's a difference between being part of an institution that's committing human rights abuses, even if it's just in a support role, and then just being a Jew and then there being a Jewish state. I don't think that's the same stretch, but I definitely agree that not everybody who served in the IDF is guilty of a crime or should be charged with a crime, like, obviously, especially because it's compulsory service. Nomad says, you don't seem the type to commit war crimes. No, definitely not a war crime kind of guy, if I may say so. But I don't know, if I was an IDF soldier and during October 7th and radicalized by October 7th, would I act differently? If I was in Gaza and my life was in danger, is it possible that back then with my 18, 19, 20-year-old mind, I like to think no, but I also recognize that I'm a human, and humans in certain conditions act certain ways. So it's possible. I also was far more extreme back then, although never hateful. Even back then, I remember being more moderate than my fellow soldiers. Like I thought Bibi was a great leader back then. Like I thought Bibi was great, and I didn't need to join the IDF. I joined because I thought that's what being a good Zionist is. You make Aliyah and you join the IDF, like my father and my grandfather and my uncles. I was convinced that that's what it means to serve your people. But even in the West Bank, I remember this incident where we arrested two teenage boys who were throwing stones. I wasn't part of the arrest, but I was in charge of checking on them. They were kept in like a military vehicle overnight so we could bring them to the police the next morning and get them processed. And I had to check in on them every few hours to take them to pee, make sure they're still zip tied and stuff, and bring them food. And then when it was time to bring them food, they told me to just bring them pita and hummus. But I brought them like Jello and pudding and different snacks because they'd been sitting there 12 hours. I'm like, yo, let these guys enjoy a little dessert, And they got mad at me for doing that. So I guess there was some difference, but I was far more extreme back then. I didn't understand that my presence in the West Bank was oppressive towards them. I didn't see it that way. I'm like, yeah, I'm just here protecting my people. This is what we need to do to protect my people. I never questioned it till years later. Arimov goes, no one in the IDF should be on trial for anything. IDF soldiers deserve medals. Okay there, buddy. Let me ask you a question, Arimov. So there was an incident where one unit where they took a 70-something-year-old man and they used him as a human shield. They were sending him to buildings for hours to see if they're booby-trapped or not. Building after building after building, using this grandfather as a human shield. Eventually, they let him go, and he was shortly shot dead by another unit. Should the soldiers involved in that be charged, or do you think that they should get a medal? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Simfo is saying Adar, not if it's done regardless of ties to specific crime. War crimes are still in the sense that they need to be litigated. If people are being associated for vague, non-specific association with IDF, that's not different than a vague, non-specific association with Israel. In terms of the court of law, I agree 100%. I just don't think those are the same in the court of public opinion, and I think the court of public opinion actually has an impact on how people are treated and how safe people feel in certain situations. Was there ever a situation where you questioned if you might have to refuse an unlawful order? No, I never crossed my mind. Thankfully, I never had to do anything horrific, just checkpoints, patrols, and stuff like that. What might happen to someone in that situation? If you refuse an unlawful order, you generally go to jail, but it depends what it is. Not long though, a few weeks to a few months at most, depending on what it is. Next week, we're going to have, there are a bunch of there is a bunch of a group of Israelis, they call them refusenikim, like people who refuse to join the IDF. So they burnt their what's it called? Tzav Gius. what's tzavgius in English? There's certain words I only know in Hebrew because it's connected to the military. Like they're recruitment papers, conscription notice, and they burnt them in front of the municipality in Tel Aviv. So I'm gonna have one of them on the channel next week. Looking back, does being a Zionist feel like being in a cult? No. Being a Zionist is a very vague term. Most of the world's Jews identify as Zionists, and they have very different interpretations of what that means. Not only different interpretations, but very different views. But it is true that if you strongly believe that Israel should exist, you are much more likely to be biased in favor of Israel, right? And you might be more charitable in interpreting their actions, and you may get your news from pro-Israel commentators and analysts, and you're seeing the world through that framing. I don't know if this is any different from other ideological positions, but I wonder what it's like being in that camp now, where you're still very much believing the official narrative on things and how Gaza is being conducted, and these claims about like lowest civilian to combatant ratio in history, and IDF being the most moral army in the world. Like, if people are still that deep in it, I wonder what that's like. But I don't know. I've never been in a cult, so I don't have anything to compare it to, right? A cult also requires coercion. There's a few criteria for what determines if someone's in a cult or not. Simfo says, if you're blocked from movement in a Western country for non-specific association with the IDF, that's pretty legal. Yeah, if you're arrested, yeah. But I'm not talking about that. I'm saying on one hand, there's arrests happening of people who served in Gaza, but also there could be societal repercussions for anybody who's been in the IDF because of how people associate with the IDF. Well, one more thought on the whole cult thing. What is interesting, though, when it comes to the cult, Shael Ben Ephraim, who we've gotten, I don't know if any of you follow him on Twitter, but people have gotten to see him transform from a liberal Zionist to what you would call, let's give it a name, humanist Zionist, where he just denounced liberal Zionism and started saying what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And then from going anti-Zionist and working to dismantle Israel. This has been a transformation all in the span of, let's say, a year and a half. The amount of hate he gets from Israelis and supporters of Israel is disproportionate to what he's saying. And it seems like a lot of it is connected to feeling like he was once one of theirs and now he's a traitor. They're not just mad at his views, it's at his public transformation. And he, interestingly, came out recently and said it was Zionists who made him anti-Zionist because of how cruel they were to him. That they were so cruel to him, it made him hate the entire movement. Now, that's not a principled position, right? Whether you're Zionist or anti-Zionist should not be dependent on how you're treated. It should be connected to some, greater value. But, we are humans, so he's having a very human reaction to being essentially just constantly abused by people online. It actually has affected him. And I think we do see this all the time with audience capture, or everyone needs their little community. And if you spend a lot of time online, you look for your online community. And if one side's embracing you and the other side's attacking you, you start to feel, camaraderie with one group and animosity towards the other. It's very natural. In fact, I'd go on to say it's a survival instinct, right? We need a tribe to survive. So we're just seeing that play out in the digital world. Noam says, remember to differentiate between two types of unlawful orders. Those kinds of unlawful you are ordered by the military laws to refuse. Not refusing those types of order is what lands you in jail. Is that called being a group? Oh, that's another comment. Wait, so what are the two types? Like can you elaborate on the two types? Noam is saying, isn't that what a grifter is? I think a grifter is somebody who's doing it for money or fame. I think he genuinely had an ideological switch, but I don't know. We could analyze exactly what being a grifter means. I don't consider him a grifter though. I think he's taking his moral position today is better than what it was, but it was also, I think his moral position a few months ago was at its peak when he was not calling for the destruction of Israel, but more so the liberation of Palestine alongside Israel. I think that's probably for my subjective worldview, I would consider that to be a better position. Unless he's very, very explaining, well, I don't know. If you have a very strong belief that there's there's a way to ensure the rights of all people living on the land that doesn't require Jewish institutions, then I wouldn't say that's a less moral position. You could maybe call it a less realistic or a more naive position to think that that's possible, but I wouldn't say I want to take that back. I don't think it's less moral. It's only less moral if you wish harm to one group or another. Let's see. We have a bunch happening here on Twitter. Look, guys, we can't do everything on YouTube. We'll need to prioritize super chats. If anyone wants to toss a super chat, let's see. Okay, Shacho. So you elaborated on Dr. Abu Sitta. He's a Palestinian researcher talking about practical ways for a right of return for Palestinians. I find his plan realistic, but I think it could be an interesting conversation. Oh, cool! I'd love to speak to him. Emperor Ghidorah is saying, "Do you think there will be a dramatic shift in American policy towards Israel in the next decade or two?" I think it seems more likely than not. The trend of both the right and the left in America is increasingly anti-Israel. Sure, that could change, but the current trajectory is very clearly going in one direction and going in that direction fast. Mo Ali says, salam alaikum. Just want to say it's awesome to find someone who has common sense and not hypocrite. Careful they don't lump you with the goems. What's the goems? Oh, bro, that's a little anti-Semitic, my guy. I appreciate the first part, but you don't got to end it with that. He said, careful that they don't lump you with the goyim, meaning the non-Jews. Well, many of my fellow own, who I have no hate in my heart towards, don't like me at all, but that's okay. Emperor says, I've seen a couple of articles about the IDF using Palestinians as human shields. Yeah, there's been a few reports currently of that. Mo Ali says, why have I seen Palestinians and Jews live and work together in NYC, but not in the Middle East? I mean, when you come to America, everyone's American. You know, you have this shared identity. You could put your differences aside and work together. But there's been many Muslim-Jewish cooperation in the Middle East throughout many centuries, here on the land of Israel and Palestine and many other places. It's not that it was a perfect situation, but there was certainly cooperation and friendship that happened for centuries, for sure. Ibn Saifi says, have you reached out to Yaakov Shapira yet? No, I haven't, but thanks for reminding me. Now that we have Scott G doing outreach. Scott, if you're still watching this, let's write down Yaakov Shapira as well. If not, I'll remember this. But we will get Yaakov on now that Scott's helping with outreach. When you talk to the Hebrew Canaanite guy, ask him about the recent incident with his brother-in-law at their family dinners. Having been raised religious, sounded very culty to me. Is this a religious family? Do you have more info on what kind of a thing it was? In Hebrew, bilti chukit ba'alil is the type you're supposed to refuse. Oh, blatantly on. Okay, right. Okay, what Noam's saying is true. If there's an unlawful order that's very clearly, if there's an order that very clearly is unlawful, you're meant to refuse it. Right. But if there's an order that you're meant to carry out and you refuse it, then yeah, you get in trouble. Thanks for that clarification, Noam, because that is important. Let's see. Right. I'll tell the challenge though, Noam, with this is right now, and for this reason, we've had probably over 20 whistleblowers who served in Gaza come out and share blatant war crimes. Unless you just want to say that these publications are completely making it up. But that's a pretty serious allegation. These are all publications that are left-wing and have bias, but that's not the same as making up a whistleblower report, right? You've had, I think, well over 20 at this point, right? And it's obvious why they're anonymous, because think about what would be the backlash if they weren't anonymous. You forever will be painted, well, maybe not forever, but very well forever may be painted a traitor by your own people. There's certainly repercussions for such a thing. So you could see why they're doing it. I do think we're going to have many more whistleblowers coming out for the years to come. I think we're going to hear a lot more horrors. It is interesting if one day there'll be strength in numbers and enough IDF soldiers decide to come out publicly and take a stance. That would be interesting. But when there's such strong social pressure and perhaps even risk of jail, right? Because since October 7th, Israel has been way more authoritarian with how with their arrest policies. There's real repercussion for coming out and refusing an order, and then talking about it. So it's tricky. They could say you're meant to, but if the pressures are against doing so, you're not going to see that happen nearly as much as you'd like to. And also, I think humans have a tendency to be radicalized by one another. So when you're in the thick of it, when you feel like you're in danger, often the most extreme of a unit can pull everybody into their direction. I think there's something about human nature that kind of gravitates towards the extremes, especially when it's a situation of fear. Riz82, thank you for the $14 super chat. Much appreciated. Just want to clear up misinfo about Islam and peace treatiness. It is haram for Muslims to make treaties in bad faith and are not allowed to be the ones breaking them. Interesting. Okay. Well, thanks for that. What I do know, I'm certainly not an expert on Islam. I'm not an expert on Judaism either, for that matter. But I did understand that taqiyya, which we often hear people cite, they're like, oh, you can't trust anything a Muslim says. They have this concept called taqiyya, which says they're allowed to lie. So first of all, I understood taqiyya is a Shia concept, but even that, you're only allowed to do it in a situation of life or death. So this was created during Shia persecution. They were able to lie about their faith to keep themselves safe. So that was translated to every Muslim is allowed to lie in order to deceive people. But thank you for that. Thank you for that info and for the super chat. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Nick Yes is saying that 20,000 IDF soldiers suffer from PTSD now. Yeah, and the suicide rate is increasing pretty drastically. There's been more conversation about suicide as of the past few weeks. Yeah, I mean, the cost of conflict is far greater than what you can see in the numbers, right? For example, we often hear 70. Well, the official number of reported deaths is 59,000 deaths reported, but we know that that's an undercount. And we know that there's like another 150,000 reported injured. But how many million Gazans have severe PTSD? I would say probably 100% of them, right? A report came out the other day that every day, an average of 10 Gazan children are losing at least one limb. This is not the stuff we hear about. When you hear injured, it's like, oh, you think shrapnel, they get over it. No, this is brain injuries. This is losing limbs. Gaza has the highest child amputee rate in the world. Or let's talk about Israel. We've relatively unscathed, right? Only 500 soldier deaths, but thousands injured. And again, these are serious injuries, brain damage, loss of limbs, 20,000 PTSD as the recent report. This is a generation of young men that will forever be scarred. So the cost of war is always far greater than what the numbers tell us. Let's see what else we got. It is getting scarier to criticize Israel while living in it. Yeah, I haven't gotten any backlash yet, but what's your experience with that, Shacha? Are you saying that from experience? So Ria, Riz confirmed saying Taqiyya is regarded as the act of maintaining secrecy or mystifying one's beliefs when one's life or property is threatened. That makes sense. I mean, Judaism has a concept like that as well. It's called pikuach nefesh. You're allowed to break the commandments if it's to save your life or the life of a loved one. Maybe a religious person in chat can correct me if I'm mistaken. The only thing you're not allowed to do in order to save your life is to kill somebody else, unless it's the person trying to kill you. But if somebody says either you kill that person or I'll kill you, you can't do that. You're meant to die. You're not allowed to bow to an idol to save your life. That sounds a little extreme. And then the third is, I think, incest. You're not allowed to engage in incest to save your life. But maybe there's a religious person here. I see we have a few religious people. Maybe you could confirm that. I do have, most of my family is religious, so I do know a little bit. But I recall that those are the three instances where you can lie. So we have pikuach nefesh. That's the equivalent of Muslims taqiyya. It's interesting how heavily that was turned into this concept that all Muslims can lie whenever they want. I mean, I think this is probably similar to many anti-Semites' interpretation of the Talmud, right? They read certain things in the Talmud, and then they attribute that to the beliefs of the majority of Jews. It's probably similar. If the U.S. wanted to pressure Israel, all it had to do was just threaten to pull its military and financial aid, and Israel will overnight stop the genocide. I agree with you that the United States has enough leverage to get Israel to make concessions. I don't know if pulling aid overnight is what would stop them, because then the aid is it would need to be like a threat to pull the aid, or you pull the aid until XYZ demands are met. Yeah, I could see that working. I just don't know if Trump is, or anyone else is going to. Maybe the next in line or the next in line, right? It very well may be that in one generation from now, you cannot get elected if you're blindly supportive of Israel. You'll need to take a more critical approach, and this doesn't mean you need to hate Israel, but at the very least, just not blind support like we often see from U.S. politicians. That blind support very well might be a deal breaker for future future elections. And I'd say that's good because the U.S. acts as an enabler for Israel's recklessness. And if we want Israel to transform, enablers don't allow that to happen. Yara, who is a Palestinian, says criticizing Israel in the West Bank is worse. Well, that's true, I would say. It's also worse if you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel. Like if you look at the arrests made since October 7th, it's primarily Palestinian citizens of Israel, aka Israeli Arabs. They're arrested. They're arrested for even just showing sympathy with Gazans. There's been a few instances like that. Simfo saying, what I don't like about these observations is that it sounds like a new discovery that war is bad. Well, I think it's actually something we need to constantly be reminding ourselves and others, because we have this, and it really comes down to just in-group, out-group differences, but we become cold and callous the second it's the category of war, right? So we live in a society where we understand that humans deserve an inalienable right to life and that human rights should be protected, even to the point where there's vibrant debate over if murderers should lose their inalienable right to life, right? Capital punishment, that's highly debated. But all of a sudden war, it's like, it's just war. If you need to kill 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 200,000, it's just war. Our ability to become so cold and callous simply because it's war, I think is deeply problematic and dangerous. The category that we like to call collateral damage is just a collective of individuals who got their inalienable right to life stripped away from them. That's something pretty serious. And I think if we are going to survive the century, there's many things that could take us, but our inability to create some kind of global institutions, some kind of international order that protects people's rights, our inability to do that combined with AI weaponry, I think should terrify all of us, you know? And it's not like I lie in bed losing sleep over this, but when I try to just think very rationally, what are the biggest threats we face? That very clearly seems like one of them, our inability to protect the rights of all humans. So I think we should, I intentionally make these observations. I'm trying to remind people that war is absolutely horrific and that we should always seek non-violent means to solve our problems. And if we're going to engage in violence, then we need to know that we've exhausted all other options. Let's see. Yeah, that is an interesting point. AOC got a lot of backlash for not supporting the cut funding for the Iron Dome. Her argument was that saves lives. I want to stop Israel from getting offensive weapons, not defensive weapons. And I hear the argument for and against that. But my question is, why wasn't the bill against offensive weapons? Why was it for defensive weapons? I didn't look into it, but that's the part of this that confused me. Sonny says, I've started following the YouTube channel of DAG to understand the disease of malnutrition in Palestinian children in Gaza and the famine. Oh, can you drop the link? I'm going to be down to check that out. But yeah, it is getting worse. The malnutrition is definitely getting worse, and the number of people dying from malnutrition is increasing. I did not watch the recent Jubilee. Are you talking about the one with Mehdi Hassan? I watched some clips. It seemed pretty hilarious, but no, I didn't watch it. Maybe this weekend I'll do a live stream viewing. Molly, it says it's almost funny to see how close Jews and Muslims are culturally and theologically, but the hate between us seems unsolvable. Yeah. Culturally, probably a bigger difference than theologically, I would think, but I think both those are bridgeable, you know. Well, I guess it depends which Jews. I would say Jews from the Middle East and North Africa are going to be culturally more similar to many Muslims, less so than European Jews. But yeah, theologically, there's definitely a lot of similarities. In fact, I recently learned that Jews are allowed to pray in a mosque, but not in a church. I found that fascinating. Supposedly praying in a church is idolatry, but a mosque is not. I don't understand the rationale there, but it's interesting. And Prigidora, you're asking the same question, but I think you probably logged out and logged back in because I did respond, so I would go back like 10 minutes. But I do think the attitude towards Israel will shift in the coming decades, yes. Shachar, responding to their question about backlash, I haven't gotten any direct backlash, but I'm not really vocal in public platforms. It's more of the feeling in conversations with friends and family. I hear that. My frustration, Shachar continues and says, my frustration is that many liberal Israelis can't see themselves truly collaborating politically with Palestinians and Palestinian citizens of Israel. How can we overcome this obstacle? Yeah, that's a good question. I think first we need to stop the bloodshed. It's very hard for people to think of the future when there's blood being spilt every day, and when the hostages are still in tunnels. So the moment we get that sigh of relief that it's over, we can start seeing things more clearly. But I think it will require just good political leadership to inspire hope in the nation. Another situation where we have like Mansour Abbas joins the coalition, and then we de facto are working with Palestinian citizens of Israel, right? Like we saw that happen. That was pretty historic. I'd like to build upon that and have the Arab parties continue to be part of government, and that should be normalized, right? An Arab party being part of the coalition should be normal, and perhaps even one day, I don't want to say a necessity because that's probably dangerous democratically. Let me think about that. I mean, they should have similar power to the ultra orthodox, right? If their demographics are similar size, similar political power, but the more they're in government, the more that's normalized. So we have seen that happen. So I'd like to see us build upon that, and actually collaborating politically with Palestinians. Again, we need a leader to inspire hope to get back to the negotiating table and present a plan to all our people of what's possible. We just haven't even tried for decades. We've just been kicking the can down the road, maintaining a status quo, which, as we see, will always produce more violence. Have you watched The Enemies Project, Shachar asks? No, I haven't, but feel free to drop a link. I'm not sure what that is. I'll get back to Discord for comments. So no, I'm saying because of iconography in churches, that's like idolatry. So you're saying like you can't have an actual image of Muhammad, but you could have one of Jesus and Mary. So that iconography is idolatry. So praying there is like praying to an idol. Okay, interesting. Kosher also includes halal, in case you didn't know. Correct, but halal does not fully include kosher. I do know that. Okay, so I didn't know halal. So all kosher food is also halal by default, but it would probably depend on the type of halal, right? Some might want it to have a certain certification for it to be halal. I'm imagining that's how it works, just because I know that's how kashrut works. I do know though that halal, it could work both ways. Like halal meat can be seen as kosher, but halal shrimp is not going to be kosher, right? And for those who don't understand why, because shrimp is not kosher. Like shellfish, Muslims can eat, but Jews don't eat shellfish. Yeah, I see there's okay, Omar's saying a kosher certification is not enough to make it halal. Okay, that doesn't surprise me. But in terms of the actual rules of halal, what are they? Because they probably overlap. I think what Maxim was saying is they're the same rules, more or less. For food to be kosher, I mean, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of this. So first of all, if you're eating a mammal, it needs to split its hoof, like have a split hoof, and chew its cud, means like chew, regurgitate, chew, like there's a whole process there. And then you need to cut its throat with one sharp slice in between a certain bone, like the certain section here, and say a prayer before you do it. And I think even sharpen the knife between each cut, which modern kosher does not do that because they mass slaughter, so they're not sharpening between each cut. For poultry, which technically isn't considered meat, it just can't be a bird of prey, so it can't be a bird that eats other birds or other animals, so eagles, falcons, hawks, no go. And then for fish, it needs to have scales, so shellfish, shrimp, all that, no go. How'd I do, my religious friends? Oh, we have Joseph Cohen here in the viewers. Good to see you, Joseph. Israel Advocacy Movement. Hanafi eat shark, but Jews don't. We built different. Wait, who's Hanafi? Excuse my ignorance. But okay, Joseph, you know kashrut. Tell me, how'd I do? Okay, Hanafi refers to the largest school of 4 Islamic schools of jurisprudence. It was founded by Abu Hanifa. Okay, so shark is another one, but it's beyond shark, right? It's also shrimp and lobster and all that. I believe Muslims eat also. Scales and gill for fish. Okay. Okay, cool. Can we eat snake? No, we definitely cannot eat snake. Well, we can, just not according to kashrut. No, only mammals. Only mammals and birds that don't eat other. Wait, how do you define that? It can't be a bird of prey, but if a bird eats a worm, that's not a bird of prey. So is the way it's defined a bird that eats other mammals? Maybe, is that how they do it? Because a worm, I mean, you're preying on a worm, but technically that's not a bird of prey. And then when it comes to meat and milk, that's actually interesting. So it doesn't explicitly say don't eat meat and milk. It says which means don't cook a kid, meaning a baby goat, in its mother's milk. I've heard some say that chalev could be translated to chelev, which actually means fat. Don't cook a kid in its mother's fat, which pagans used to do. And the reason it's worth saying pagans used to do it is because a lot of Judaism is separation from pagan tradition. So there's an interesting theory there. But whether it's fat or milk, it doesn't say don't eat meat and milk. That's how it was interpreted in the generations following. Now, what's interesting is poultry is not considered meat. So technically, up until I think pretty recently, meaning as of a few hundred years ago, you could eat dairy and chicken, but there's a concept in Judaism called, is it maritain or masitain? Masitain. So because poultry could be confused for meat, we don't want to give people the wrong impression. For the same reason they say you shouldn't hang laundry before Shabbat, because if people see that it's hung on Shabbat, they might think you hung it on Shabbat. So there's different areas where this concept is at play. Okay, Joseph, who, for those who don't know, Joseph is an observant Jew, so he definitely understands this better than me. I just know the knowledge from my family being religious. But Joseph says we're only supposed to eat birds we have a tradition of eating because of the confusion around what is kosher. There's a question over whether we can eat turkey. Interesting. Interesting. Emperor asks, is veganism allowed in Judaism? For what I understood, Islam seems to be rather progressive in its views treatments towards animals, so Islam should be cool with veganism. Yeah, veganism's fine in Judaism. You have a lot of Israel has one of the largest vegetarian and vegan populations in the world. It also has one of the highest meat consumption per capita. So we're pretty extreme to both those edge cases. We're pretty extreme on the edges, but a lot of the human rights movement has come from rabbis and religious leaders, and even Harav Kook, I think, he put out some writing on how we're going to be vegetarian one day. Joseph says there's less mistakes in your kashrut analysis than your genocide analysis, but you're still making mistakes. Well, thanks, Joseph, but I disagree on the second part of your comment. And you're welcome to join me for a stream. We could talk about it. Happy to always talk about it. This is also we got a nice crew here on Discord. You could even hop on now if you want to, or we could set a time aside for it. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, guys, I see there's a lot of talk about the child amputee. So the Gaza has the highest rate of child amputees in the world. That's per 100,000. That's not total child amputees compared to any other country. It's per 100,000. Maritain. Okay, thank you, Levi. We saw the limit to my knowledge. It's from the Talmud. MB says, Adar, what are your thoughts on the Nelk podcast with BB? They got a lot of backlash. Not sure if you've seen it. Also, the Jew episode with Mehdi. Yeah, I mean, what were they thinking? I mean, golly gee. Golly gee. One of the worst war criminals of our era getting a softball interview by... I don't even know what the Nelk boys got famous for. What do they do? They're like pranksters or something. I'm okay talking. You could talk to anybody, right? Fuck, if you're in the 40s and you want to interview Hitler, do it. But you can't give a softball interview if you're talking to somebody like that. So talk to anybody, just prepare yourselves so it's just not a platform for them to spew propaganda, and that's what it was. They deserve the backlash. Sunny FX. Yeah, I just dropped the link, but thank you for suggesting. Cool. We got a nice crew here on Discord. If anybody wants to hop on, feel free to raise your hand. Just keep in mind it is being streamed. Another person a lot of people keep telling me to speak to is Lonerbox, which I spoke to him a few months ago, but he's like the most recommended guest for whatever reason. Everyone wants me to talk to Lonerbox. So I messaged him today. Maybe we'll see how he feels about it. Maybe next week or something. Okay, let's see. So we're seeing Yara saying, IOF arrests those who criticize Israel on social media, support Hamas, etc. Every city has its Israeli Mossad captain. Ours is called Suleiman. Wait, Yara, can you explain more? Is that essentially just somebody who works for the PA? They're like a PA police, but that they work with Israel? I'm very interested in knowing more about that structure. And then Noam's asking, but doesn't the PA members do that? Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. Like, is that members of the PA who who are the Mossad captains, or are they actual Israelis? Yeah, that's what I'm asking too. Oh, cool, Sympho. Cool to see that you're close with Loner. Well, I mean, if he doesn't get back to me, then maybe you could shoot him a message. I don't know what his views are, but everyone says that they want us to talk because there's things we need to discuss. So I imagine there's probably some fundamental disagreements there, but I'm definitely down. Yeah, Ra, what do you think of the IOF having the right to check your phones on checkpoints? No, that's obviously fucked up. I mean, yeah, come on. If Israel decides that there needs to be checkpoints for security, then that checkpoint needs to be as nice and comforting of an experience as possible. And hell, everybody who waits at a checkpoint should get a lollipop. They should be greeted with dignity and respect. They should be treated with kindness. That's if we maintain checkpoints. We should create a situation, create a reality where checkpoints aren't needed. But as long as they exist, they should be as good of an experience as possible. They should not be oppressive, and definitely not just checking people's phones. Azriel says, I find it funny when people say IOF. I mean, you can understand why people would say that. And then Justin says, almost as hilarious as the IDF. Oh, okay, Sympho saying, you're saying not so close, didn't mean to imply that. You simply approve of his process. He has intellectual rigor and respect it. So I have heard that from others, and that's why one of the reasons I'm interested in speaking to him. Yeah, about the IDF IOF. I mean, when my brother, I didn't hear this when I was in the IDF, but my brother was an officer, and when he was in officer school, the officer training him said, don't have any questions about it. We're called the IDF, but we are an offense force. The way we create defense is through strong offense, something along those lines. I don't think that's like a common thing that commanders are saying. I never heard that, but that's an interesting to hear. Omar, you want to come on? Okay, we're bringing Omar and Justin on. Wait, it says invite sent, so you guys can just come on. Is that how it works? Levy's asking, are you familiar with the philosophy of Yoshua Leibowitz? I keep hearing the name, but no, admittedly, I am ignorant on who that is, but feel free to share. Yeah, Omar, what's up, man? Hold on, let's bring this back on so people can see, so people on stream can see. Cool.
Hey, Adar.
What's up, man?
Oh, yeah. So,
Good, how's it going?
doing good. What about you?
Good, just a casual Tuesday stream, the usual. I will probably wrap it up in 20 to 30 though. I'm trying to get my sleep more regulated in these evening streams. Definitely make it hard.
But, yeah, I was gonna tell you after because you messaged me at like 10 p.m. and you said you were heading to sleep last night. You're starting to sleep early.
Well, yeah, because the week before I went to bed at like 4 a.m. almost every night, and that definitely takes a toll, So I'm trying to 10 p.m. shut down the electronics and start winding down. Yeah. But yeah, what's up?
I used to totally believe in that, but then I just started taking power naps in the middle, and this is why whenever I'm unavailable, I'm on a power nap.
Okay, good to know. Power naps, I wake up more tired, so I don't really do them. They kind of fuck me up. You got to find that sweet spot, but if I nap too long, then I wake up super groggy.
That's right.
Real quick, I'm going to read off two comments.
Regarding
let me just read two comments.
Regarding something you said about
Wait, Omar, real quick, just because they're relevant to just, I don't want them to get lost. So Emperor Ghidorah is just giving thoughts on loner boxing. From what I've seen, he tries to be balanced in his views on Israel-Palestine, but I think he also whitewashes the genocide like Destiny. Okay, that's a thought. Well, cool. I'd be interested in speaking to him and see if we can find common ground on some things. Tariq says, as a Sudanese, you're truly a different voice and a sign of hope in the way you present issues. Truly find discussing a great way of seeing different perspectives. May peace come to you, to both our lands. Thank you, Tariq. I love hearing that. I really appreciate it. And yes, may you have peace in your land one day soon as well. Emperor Ghidorah making a joke. I'll finish streaming in a couple of minutes. Streams for another 2.5 hours. That's true, but that was the weekend, and I'm not doing that tonight. Be right. Okay, Omar, what's up, man?
I was just saying that I think you read something I sent wrong. Don't need even, there is no need even for a halal certification, as long as even like people say it's kosher without having a kosher or halal certification, it's considered halal.
So how do people know if something's halal or not?
If people say it is, actually, this is a huge difference of opinion between multiple scholars. Some scholars would say you don't need to do like deep investigations about the source of meat and if it was slaughtered correctly or not, as long as the general consensus or the general opinion within a restaurant that this is like was slaughtered the right way, you can just eat. You don't need to trace it back to the factory. Some others would say this applies in Muslim countries since it's a given, but in non-Muslim countries, you have to do this kind of investigation. But I generally follow the first one. So if I'm at a restaurant and someone says the food is kosher, I'm just eating it. If I'm at your house and you're inviting me, I wouldn't need to double check everything or just eat the food as long as like I know you won't be like you're Jewish. You're not you won't bring non-kosher food, you know.
Okay, interesting. So it's just based on trust.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Thanks for sharing that. I want to read something. Yara clarified a point. Hold on. So the Mossad agents that you said exist in every city in Palestine, no, they're not PA. They are Israeli commanders responsible for a certain village, city, mainly watching what is going on social media, who advocates for terrorism and arrest those who have guns. He arrests you and publish your face on his Facebook page. What? Yara, this is, can you send me a link to who you're talking about, the Suleiman guy? I'm so intrigued by this. We should do a deep dive into what exactly this is because that's fascinating. Okay, cool. Justin, what's up, man?
Hey, Adar, what's going on? Can you hear me good? Because I'm in a different spot.
Yep, I can.
So let me ask you, isn't Loner Box, isn't that Destiny? Isn't it the same guy?
No. I think the association between them is that they did an Israel-Palestine tour together. They came here together and toured it. But I think they don't. I think Loner Box distanced himself from Destiny after the whole
the stupidity tour, the one where he was in Kufar Aza, he was in Kufar Custom, and he was in a market, and he said these people look Arab, and someone said, "Idiot, they are Arabs," and he said, "Oh, I didn't know Arabs live in Israel."
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I guess that's why they did the tour, to get informed.
Yeah, and then I mean, he made a kind of during his tour, he like did so many stupid things. He got like pulled over by one guy, and the guy was yelling at him in Hebrew, like cursing him out, like, "Why are you filming me?" And
oh yeah, I saw that.
Was,
yeah,
you know,
that was embarrassing.
And then he did some other things. Just like he's I mean, he's the thing about Destiny is that he's really good at just like he'll read something and he'll just like memorize it and just read it really fast, and people are like, "Oh my God, he's just so smart." But I just thought that was kind of his stage name or something. That's why I don't really listen to.
Oh,
these
no,
guys,
yeah,
so.
different people. I mean, look, Destiny's very, very rhetorically strong. Like, there's no denying that. So he's. I don't think we could make a claim that he's not intelligent. He is, and he articulates himself well. Does that mean he's right about what he says? I guess it depends on.
I mean, if you listen to him when he talks about American politics and liberals, like when he got into the debates with over Joe Biden and the election, when he was informed, I would say he is. I wouldn't say he's super intelligent. I would say that he does argue his positions well. But when it came to, he's kind of one of those grifters that just jumped on the Palestine-Israel situation because of after October 7th, it became popular. People wanted to hear about it, and he just, like I said, he just basically swallowed whatever pill and then just threw up everything that was in it. It wasn't, I don't think it was very well thought out. And people just, they get impressed with people who just are able to speak fast and just say things and, spew out a lot of what they think are facts and say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He must have done a lot of research.
Right. Well,
I mean, anyone who thinks that Erdogan was the prime minister of Israel, I think it was either Israel. He thought Erdogan is the prime minister of Israel. And even in one of his videos, he's Googling, when did Erdogan become prime minister of Israel? And it's I mean, that's come on.
So I think what you're saying is really one of the challenges with debates is that it's somewhat performative, and the person that puts on a better performance and that's not always dependent on who makes the best argument, it's who presented it better, will be seen as the winner of that debate. But that, for example, a good debater can destroy a bad debater, even if he's taking the position that the Holocaust was justified, right? Take the craziest position ever. A good debater can defend that against a bad debater. So I think that's the problem with debate, just that it's not always getting to the bottom of things. Like when I have some debates here and there, but I generally prefer to frame them as discussions, just because I find that they're easier to find common ground when both sides are coming into it as a discussion. But sometimes for clicks, whenever I call something a debate on YouTube, it just gets much more views. So I'll often frame something as a discussion, and that will be the energy of the conversation, but it'll be called a debate. I think that's a good balance between the two, but I think those are more productive conversations. Yeah.
So I wanted to touch base on something that you talked about, which I think is more important than this other stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
About Palestinians joining into the Israeli political process, and you mentioned Mansour Abbas. I think that the problem with people like Mansour Abbas is Mansour Abbas represents something that's very, how should I say, it seems that he's like the teddy bear that Israelis want. He's cuddly, he's chubby, he's not threatening and things like that. And the thing is that these are certain characters that it may not work, because Palestinians are looking for someone who not only will be pragmatic in approaching Israel, but also in a sense still dedicated to the core values of what they believe. Basically in the words, he's a sellout. He's a sellout, and even his own people got frustrated with him because they felt that some of the positions he was taking, recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, we are a minority in our land. And it's it was almost, if you look at some of his speeches and what he says, as almost as we're guests in this country. We're a minority, and the fact that a minority not just in numbers, but in a minority in terms of right. We're just these citizens in this big Jewish state. And I think that he loses touch with the common Palestinians who are saying that enough, to say that is basically saying to Israel, you won, you're the Jewish state, and we're just some kind of forest animals that live in the trees here. And it also goes to say, earlier we had a conversation about, Samir that you're inviting next week, and these characters like Ahmed Fouad, very articulate guys. Some of them have good vision, good ideas about self-criticizing Palestinians, but their motivations, their ties to some of these organizations, why are they chosen? Why are these guys chosen to speak? Why are they featured in Haaretz? Why are they featured at certain these pro-Zionist meetings as, hey, look at, these are the good Palestinians? Is because they are in cooperation with a lot of sort of evil forces that Palestinians are not going to recognize. So the solution is that you have to have not these kind of people. You have to have people who address the core value of Palestinianism, of what Palestinians want, and also align themselves with Israelis who are into co-resistance and coexistence, not Israelis who are looking for like a Band-Aid solution or a 1.5 state solution or a solution that is going to be a managed occupation. And it's very important because this is what's going to get us stuck. This is what Oslo got us stuck in, is that there was no commitment to full Palestinian rights in a second state. It was, we're going to have a managed area that's going to look like a state, act like a state, but it's going to be everything in the world but a state.
Right. So I hear you, and I've heard that critique of him before, but I think that anybody who wants to be a successful statesman needs to be extremely pragmatic, and that means not acting the way many who are a little bit more ideologically driven would want them to act. I think Martin Luther King, MLK Jr. was getting similar accusations from many in his community that he wants to work with their oppressors, but he was highly successful in doing so. I don't think I'm in Ode, for example.
That's a terrible comparison, because MLK would have never ever agreed to some of the principles that these guys have agreed to. I mean, MLK.
But that's not. But that's not.
Basically blamed the Palestinians for the occupation. Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib said that his grandmother.
Wait. Hold on. But we're talking about
Palestine. I mean,
wait,
Justin.
Justin.
The narrative of the enemy.
But Justin, we're not talking about Ahmed. We're talking about Mansour Abbas, who is the first Palestinian in history to be part of Knesset. I think that's something significant that should be built upon. He shouldn't be seen as a traitor. He should be seen as normalizing.
He wasn't in the first in the Knesset. He was the first in the coalition.
Yeah. No, exactly. But which means he has more of an impact, and it starts to normalize something important that Palestinians,
what I'm saying,
Palestinian citizens of Israel need to be part of governing the land, and this is a step in the right direction. He doesn't need to be perfect. And in fact, if he spoke the language you wanted him to speak, then there's no way he would be in the coalition. He needs to speak the way he speaks to get in there. So I get it. I understand that. He's not.
But this is a problem. But this is the problem, is that I am not saying that we need somebody to go in there and say armed resistance and from the river to the sea and Palestine this. What I'm saying is that the gap between Mahmoud Abbas and some of the moderates, so for example, like Ahmed Tibi is a moderate. He's not a person who's calling for the collapse of Israel or the destruction or let's go, kill Jews and stuff like that. But even to some people, Mahmoud Abbas even was too much for them. And I'm just trying to say is that I find that when dealing with Israelis and pro-Zionist Israelis, it's like, it's like the price that you guys ask for to be inclusive in this state enterprise is just always too much. And it's like, well, you need to be more accommodating. And I don't understand what more accommodating than, for example, the Palestinian Authority. How much more accommodating than the Palestinian Authority do Israelis want? I mean, you have an organization that's pretty much become an outsourced service for the occupation that is literally oppressing its people in the name of security for Jews, that works more to secure Jews than Palestinian citizens, that does more to arrest Palestinians, that threaten Israeli Jews while letting settlers go on rampages, thousands of settlers attacks that we've had in the last year or two. And it's like, no, the Palestinian Authority is still paying people to kill. It's still doing it. I don't understand. It's like this game of, it's like it'll never be enough. And I don't know if these people like Mansour Abbas and these people are going to solve that problem. I think they're going to create further resentment. And I feel that more people turned against it. And that's why if you look at the polls, Arab participation in the polls was reduced because of people like him. People actually got so frustrated with him that they left the system because they said that this guy, no matter what he does to sell us out, he's going to continue to sell us out and we're still going to get nothing in the end. And even the moderate parties of Israel, when it came time to making their coalitions, they avoided the Arab parties. and they rather let the government collapse to some right-wing fascism government, which we have now, because they purposely said we would rather go that way than to embrace these Arab parties and some of their views.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the Abbas on the other side of the green line, I actually think we probably have more agreement there that they have been a moderate government that's cooperated with Israel for decades now, and all they have to show for is less land and less power. I agree with you completely there. We played that completely wrong, and that just strengthens extremism. I don't view this as the same with Mansour Abbas. I think it's very important that we get Palestinians involved in the political process in Israel. And it's not the first guy in, he's not going to be the guy that most Palestinians like to hear from, but he's going to be the type of guy that Israelis can accept. And that begins to normalize it, and it begins to build trust. Obviously this alone isn't enough, but I think this is very important. And I think it's so important that whatever critique you have of it not being perfect, and he can't say certain things, and his people aren't fully supportive of him, all of that just pales in comparison to the fact that we've begun something and we've started to normalize something. And hopefully we see many more Palestinians in the coalition in the years to come. And hopefully they, with time, move the Overton window. So we have just a more inclusive society. How
I want to ask
I was just going to put out there, like, Justin, how else do you think Palestinian citizens of Israel should get greater cooperation within society if they're not going to serve in government? Like, what's a pragmatic way to get there?
I think that here's the thing. When someone can you guys hear me? Every time someone calls me, it's disconnected.
Yeah, I
can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I think that the Palestinian community in Israel is divided because they have this. I think that they can't really represent what they want or say what they want because they live in fear. They live in fear of backlash, because even when Mansour Abbas was in power and they started to speak out, and then we had those riots and people that were uprising after what was happening in Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, you had, Israelis, Jews going out to Palestinian towns and attacking people, and there was, riots back and forth, and including a Knesset member yelling from the pulpit saying that you guys need to be reminded what the Nakba is. We need another Nakba. So I think that the first thing has to start is that they have to have assurances that they are equal citizens, and equal citizens meaning that if they were to speak their mind or express themselves, they're not going to have to worry about being, having the police knock at 1 o'clock in the morning and being taken to jail because they wrote some post on the internet. And something as just as like, I feel sorry for the children of Gaza. So these things have to happen in order to assure them that they are part of a political system. But it's like, we want you in the political system, but we want you to be well-behaved children. And if you say anything that we find to be controversial, then you're going to end up in jail, you'll be ostracized and stuff. I don't think people really realize how, I know a lot of, I feel very bad for the Palestinians of 1948. I have many, friends there, and I've traveled there. They get the brunt from both worlds. From the Arab world, they're seen as traitors. You've accepted citizenship, you've gotten jobs, and you're working in Israel, you're basically collaborators. And they get this from the West Bank people and Gaza, and even from some Jerusalem people. And then on the other hand, from the Israeli side, they get it too, that, you guys are just these third party or third class people here. And you guys should just be grateful that we give you jobs and we allow you to work and stuff, and just be grateful for what you are and just, keep your mouth shut. It's a very tough situation to be in. And it's interesting because when you talk to people from the West Bank, I feel that they have much more freedom to express themselves as Palestinians than the Palestinians do in the Galilee, for example, or in the Triangle, because they, the people that I've met, when I bring them to the internet to speak and stuff, they actually have a lot of fear speaking. And it's not fear from their society. It's not fear from Palestinian society. It's fear because they don't feel stable in their homes, in their societies. The Palestinians, citizens of Israel, tremble because they feel that one bad move and we will turn into the West Bank. it will become like that. And I think that there's a lot of people in Israel, like an Israeli can gladly go right on his post Kahana Chai or Kahana Zadek. He can put that Kahana was right. But if a Palestinian puts prayers to the people of Gaza or something like that, it would be a very bad situation for them. And I think that this is the issue that they have before anything can go on.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think one of the ways to achieve that is to have Palestinians in government, but you could make the case that that could also be done through a civil rights movement before they join government. So I could see that approach working as well. But
a civil rights movement. See, the nice thing about with the situation with the Black civil rights movement is that, and I don't want to belittle them, I think it's one of the most successful civil rights movement that I admire the most in the world. But at the same time, it did achieve equality by the law. Maybe it still had its social problems. It didn't solve social inequality. It didn't solve racism and discrimination. But on a legal level, it did solve the problem. But what we're doing here is that this element regarding citizenship, equality before the law, access to land, access to this element, I think, is more important than the so-called, like, and here's the thing. You're going to get people probably like Joseph right here. He'll say it. They'll say Palestinians, and he says it all the time on that ridiculous channel.
Justin. We're not going to do that now. We're not.
Yeah, but people. What I'm just saying, the common Israeli view is that Palestinians have it lucky. They're living better than any other Arabs in the other Arab countries, and this is sort of in our face because Palestinians, wherever they go, they tend to do better than other people. If you go to our communities in Chile and the United States and the Gulf and even in Jordan, even in Egypt, Palestinians that move to Egypt and settle there, they actually do better because we're hardworking people. So it's not because of the grace of Israel and its fine liberal democracy and rights. It's because we're very hardworking people. We determine and we work hard and we educate ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Palestinians in South America, I think, are a great testament to that more than any place else. So thanks, Justin. We're gonna have give Joseph some time now. Awesome. Joseph, what's up, man?
Assalamu alaikum. Shalom aleichem.
Shalom, shalom. Is it just my observation, or have you lost weight since moving to Israel?
That is definitely observation. It's not my wife's. She definitely does not share that view.
Okay. Well, she sees you more than me, so she might be right. Is it Israel or is it having a kid? Probably both.
I think the food here is very good and very expensive, which is probably another explanation for why the Palestinians and the Arabs do so well here. Unless you're a millionaire, you can't survive in this country. I can't even afford to eat cheese.
So just veggies. Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, Joseph, what's up? It's been, I guess, a few months. I guess we had you on maybe 4 months ago for a nice little chat here, which I thought was awesome. So yeah, good to have you back. A little surprise visit. Oh, actually, but I saw you in person in the West Bank like 2 months ago. So that was cool. Yeah,
that was nice. That was cool. That was nice. So yeah, I guess one thing I'm quite intrigued on, because you started talking about religion, and I look at what's happening in Syria with Daesh and the Bedouin tribes, and say religion has been an instrumental part of this conflict, which seems to be absent from all of almost your discourse, other than what's kosher and what's halal to eat. And so I wondered where you see religion fitting into this, because you'll mention things like a malach, but then it's never balanced with the other side. Now, from my perspective, at least fundamentalism exists on both sides, but it's much more pronounced in Arab society than in Jewish society. It's not to say we don't have our fundamentalists and our extremists, we certainly do, but they're the fringe rather than any of the mainstream camps, although that is changing slowly.
So that's a good question. I generally, though, don't focus on religion, even on the Jewish side. I focus more so on ideology. Sometimes if I believe that this ideology comes purely from a place of religion, I would find it essential to address that. But I think you have a national conflict here between two populations fighting over national rights on the same piece of land. I think the fact that we're of different religion makes it harder to solve, but one side could have been Christian, the other could have been Buddhist, and we'd still hate each other, given our history. So I think religious fundamentalism makes it harder, but I don't think that's the root of the problem here. And just when I look through history, I see humans killing each other, whether in the name of God or in the name of some other ideology. Humans don't need all too much of an excuse to kill others. It's just they need to believe that it's in their best interest and they'll do it. Religion generally is not why they believe it's in their best interest.
So when you look north and you look to what's happening with the Druze in Syria, with the re-emergence of the Daesh fighters, with Ibn al-Nusra, etc., religion seems to be a fundamental part of that conflict. When you speak to any of the Druze, they say it's because we are a religious minority and there's no tolerance of our religion under the Jilani regime. And there's a similar lack of tolerance amongst groups like Hamas, like Islamic Jihad, etc. And it's interesting that you just see this as a nationalist struggle. When it comes to the Arab side, religion plays a huge role in the conflict, from how they name their movements to what they say they're fighting for rallying the support of the Arab world. Religion seems absolutely fundamental to this conflict. And I'd say from Gush Emunim onwards, the religious I'm not calling Gush Emunim religious fundamentalists, but there's definitely fundamentalists within their camp, like the Jewish Underground, etc. We have our own fundamentalists, and they're growing in size, and religion is becoming more present, I'd say, in the Jewish camp than ever before. Or in the Israeli camp than ever before. And so I just find it interesting that you kind of just see this as a nationalist struggle. And if we were Buddhist and Christian, it would be exactly the same, when that's not reflected in the parties involved.
So I can't comment all too much on what's happening in Syria. And the reason I haven't said all too much about it is just because I don't understand it well enough to feel like I can add anything interesting to the conversation. I would need to do a much deeper dive. But it certainly seems like religion is playing a role there, as I believe religion plays a role in many conflicts. But I often think religion is not the reason for violence. It just helps justify it. I think that's more likely how it works. And, there's a few data points we could look at. And some of these data points, on one hand, suggest that religion plays a role, but not nearly the only role. We look at Christian Palestinians and how they feel about Israel. And it's not like they're supportive of Israel. They also are anti-Israel. I'd be interested in seeing the data, but I think it's probably fair to assume that the rate at which Christian Palestinians are engaging in terror attacks is lower than Christian Muslims. So you could see, okay, Islam does impact, like religious Muslims or Islamic fundamentalists are more likely to engage in terror attacks than, let's say, a Christian Palestinian. That very well might be represented in the data. But even when you switch the religion, you have Christian Palestinians. They're not at peace with Israel. They don't support Israel's right to exist. And their polling numbers, they support violence against Israel. When we look at Christian Lebanese are more anti-Israel than your average Muslim Israeli. Right? No, I mean, that's just, yeah.
Anecdotal experience. I have many Maronite friends, Christian, who are usually pro-Israel, and I'm not sure it's as black and white as you're presenting it.
Well, this isn't about black and white. I'm not saying every Muslim. This is just represented in polling data. There's also going to be some kind of a confirmation bias. The Christian Lebanese that are going to be your friends are going to be of a certain type. The same way the Palestinians that I'm friends with are ones who are interested in peace with Israel. So I can't say anecdotally every Palestinian I meet wants peace, because there's some bias there. But the polling, there was polling on October 7th, and the majority of Christian Lebanese who currently live in Lebanon, not expats, but who live in Lebanon, were supportive of October 7th. So we see a clear difference we see instances where Christians are more extreme than Muslims, and it really all depends on other environmental factors. When we also,
I think you misunderstand what I'm saying.
Wait, hold on. I just want to give one more data. I just want to give one more data point.
Being fundamental. So if you look at how they name their organizations, etc., I'm not presenting.
I'm listening. I'm just getting a different.
I'm presenting religion as being fundamental to the conflict.
Yeah. Hold on. I just the lighting here is bothering me, but okay. Fundamental to the conflict. I can't tell you that I know exactly what the conflict would look like if we removed religion. I just don't understand. I don't see how the major focus on religion actually solves anything. You as a religious individual know that it's deeply offensive when people try to criticize Judaism, and when they look at actions Jews are doing and they somehow attribute it to Judaism. And the instance they do that, it comes off as anti-Semitic, and people become defensive, and they're no longer interested in talking about it. I imagine
you just mentioned a Malik before that.
Wait, hold on. Wait. That was in a very different context, but I just want to finish this point. It's much easier to talk to people if you just talk about ideologies and actions that are unacceptable rather than focus on in actual religion. If someone can make the case that in order to solve a problem, we need to transform the religion, and the only way to transform the religion is by actually criticizing the religion actively, then I could be convinced. I just know when you criticize religion, you generally demonize the entire group. It makes them less open to dialogue. It radicalizes them, and it doesn't get us closer to solving a problem. So I'd rather say, what actions don't we like? What beliefs don't we like? And let's work that out. I think that's just a better way to solve problems.
I think we're talking across each other, because I'm not saying here's an area of Islam I dislike. I'm saying religion is fundamental to the conflict. So if you take the Yehuda v'Shomron, the initial push into Jews living over the Green Line was spearheaded by religious Jews. If you look at the Hilltop youth today, those that are looking to create new outposts, overwhelmingly religious Jews. And so I think it would be very fair for someone on the Palestinian camp, to say, look, religion is clearly playing a role here. Why isn't it secular Israelis from Tel Aviv that are spearheading the Hilltop youth movement? Similarly, when you look to Gaza and you look at every single one of the groups, with the exception of a few Marxist, so-called Marxist groups, the Mujahideen, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, they're all religious in their very definition, in their name, in everything that they stand for. And so it's not a case of talking about something that Hamas have done that you dislike, but skirting around the issue of religion, because religion is fundamental to this conflict. And it seems that you sidestep it in almost every conversation, unless we're talking kashrut, which is the only reason I
right. No. And I think my reason is simple. I actually agree with you that religious fundamentalists are generally the most extreme in societies. Although you have some secular Israelis that are also, like, I think the Rak Bibi team, a lot of them are pretty secular. But I do agree with you. I think if everybody living between the river and the sea was a humanist, an agnostic humanist, I think it'd probably be easier. But I just don't understand how talking about religion gets us any closer to finding solutions, because it's just deeply triggering, deeply offensive. I just don't understand. So I skirt around it just because I don't get why we need to focus on it. What can we solve?
The elephant in the room. It's Jerusalem. It's Quds. It's Masjid al-Aqsa. It's Al-Adha al-Muqaddas. It's literally.
Okay, no, but that to me is easy. That to me, it's like, okay, it's a religious city. It should be for three different religions. It should have some dual control, and we should share Jerusalem. Great. Like, I don't think you need to. But it almost sounds like you want me to be like, just be more critical of religion. And I don't criticize Judaism. I don't criticize Islam. I don't
criticize. I think you should include it in your critique. You have to include it in your analysis, because this is a deeply religious land, and those that are spearheading the conflict on both sides are deeply religious in many instances. And if this conflict were taking place in Europe, it wouldn't have the interest of the entire world. if this place didn't have the holiest site for Jews, one of the holiest sites for Christians, and the third holiest site for Muslims, it wouldn't be in the public spotlight anywhere near as much.
Yeah,
as it is.
we don't disagree about that. But so if you're asking me if I think religion is a central part of the conflict, yeah, sure. I just don't. It's just less an interest of mine. Like, it's fun. You talk about kashrut. I'd rather talk about the similarities between a religion, but not when it comes to demonization. I just think there's nothing good that comes from it. But if you actually want to ask me, do I acknowledge religion plays a role in the conflict? Sure. But I think more so than religion, it's environment. I think environment is the most important to focus on. Like, what are the systems and institutions that should rule the land? The religion of the people matters less because they're going to respond to these systems and institutions. So that's generally what I focus on.
So a couple of people are getting quite annoyed at me in the comments, and one of them said, "What about Kahanis?" Yes, Kahanis are religious fundamentalists.
Yeah, he was a religious
the
fundamentalist.
Overwhelming majority of Kahanis are religious.
He also thought Israel should be a theocracy, believe it or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that, and that's. So then the second one was, then why was the Holocaust in the public spotlight? The Holocaust was in the public spotlight because it was part of the largest conflict that humanity had ever seen, and it was one of the most ferocious genocides of any people that ever been witnessed. We have been fighting in this land for over a century now, and the level of attention from the world is because of where we are fighting and the significance to religious communities around the world. Every time a Muslim sees me on Omegle, they're talking about Omegle, without a doubt, the overwhelming majority curse me because I'm Jewish and Israeli. Now, the majority of Christians don't do that because the Christians aren't tied into this religious conflict in the same way that Muslims and Jews around the world are. And so I think you cannot detach religion from the continuation of this conflict. And I think as long as you have different communities that have the potential of controlling Jerusalem, you're going to have conflict here. And it's Jerusalem is the elephant in the room. And I think it's more than territory. And yes, you can mention it can be shared, but neither party wants to relinquish that control. Israel doesn't want to relinquish control over Jerusalem, and the Palestinians don't want to relinquish control over Jerusalem. Neither party will sign up to that.
Well, that's a great opportunity to build a shared institution that knows how to rule the land together. It should be an institution that is part Jewish, part Muslim, part Christian. Fuck it, even part UN if you want it to be. There's many ways to do it, but I could see a way that it can be shared. If the appeal right now, there's very little talk about sharing it. It's both sides want to rule it. That's a just non-starter for both sides. If we start to actually talk about what sharing it looks like, I actually think we could find common ground. I just don't, Palestinians I think would be willing because it's certainly a step in the right direction. It's better than their status now. What will incentivize Israelis to talk about sharing Jerusalem? Probably pressure from the outside or understanding that it's needed to solve the conflict.
So I would say when it comes to sharing, we only need to look towards history. When the Christians controlled Jerusalem, they didn't share it. When the Khulafa controlled Jerusalem, they shared it a little bit more than the Christians, but it certainly wasn't the degree of tolerance that you experience today under Israeli control. So Israel will say that we should control it because we will afford religious equality to all parties, but under any other system, that equality has never been afforded to us. You only need to look at the equality that Jews experience in the surrounding Muslim nations, where you can't even lane tefillin. Tefillin are illegal in in several Muslim countries surrounding us. To understand that it's not. Yet you may see a simple path there as a secular Israeli Jew, but history tells a very different story to this being a simple case of sharing the land, because it's never been shared. Up until today.
But you gave a lot of examples of what sole control by some religious entity in the past, when equality was rarely a thing, what it looked like. But does that mean if you have a shared institution in the modern world, will that be an institution that is discriminatory? I don't think we should just assume that to be the case. But let me ask you a question. If you were to believe, if you were to know that right now, the one area we can't agree on is Jerusalem, and Palestinians say, you know what, we're ready to accept Israel's right to exist. We'll make all these concessions, no more violence, but it's important for us that there's a shared institution that rules Jerusalem and will ensure equality over Jerusalem. Would you not get on board with that?
So potentially, but that's been offered in the past and rejected. Olmert offered the Jerusalem, the old city in the Holy Basin, so like Silwan, that area, now the Yemenite village.
But that's not. But we could get into the history and rejection. I'm just more interested in knowing if you could get behind a solution like that.
So potentially, but I think the issue you're going to encounter is Muslims, at least here in the land, don't believe that Jews should have the right to pray on Har HaBayit, Haram al-Sharif, and Jews do. And so even the very statement of sharing, well, if you're saying that Jews can share it by praying by the wall that Salahuddin allowed us to pray by when he said we could no longer pray at the gates, if you're saying that's what sharing, maybe I wouldn't get behind that. If you're saying that all religious parties have the ability to pray on Har HaBayit without restriction, then potentially. But I don't see that being offered by the Palestinians. I think that would be rejected. I mean, it's rejected today. There's outrage when Jews pray. If the Jew falls to the floor on Har HaBayit, it can trigger all manner of violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge things with the current dynamic. Can I say for certain that if there's a peace solution that they still won't be okay with it? I can't tell you for sure. Maybe it's worth bringing on a more religious Palestinian and getting their perspective on this. But it's very hard to judge somebody's like public sentiment in the midst of a conflict. It's just not. It's not going to give you an accurate understanding of how people act when there is no conflict or when there isn't a power dynamic. Public opinion changes quite drastically with the shift in the reality. So I wouldn't think. I would say to you, I don't think you should be too stuck on the idea that they'll never accept it. I think you're looking at it currently, and currently we're in a very challenging situation where they've been essentially living under our boot in one way or another or been on the losing side of our aggression for like 100 years now. They view the world a certain way. That makes sense.
Even the way you frame that is being on the receiving end of our aggression is an appalling way to frame the conflict.
I know, because you don't like to accept who we've been to them. It's you'd rather make it seem like, yeah, we're just two equal sides and we just happen to have the upper hand every time. That's not really, in my opinion, an accurate way of looking at it, because that's not really true. We've pretty much always been more powerful. And just so we don't get into like the early or the late 1800s, since 48 until today, they've been consistently brutalized by us. We respond, we impose on them conditions that will almost certainly lead to violence. And then we respond to that violence by imposing more of those same conditions. And then we keep saying, when will they learn to accept us? You generally, our approach shouldn't be oppress them until they accept us. That just is not the way to go about it. Not only is it immoral, it's just clearly not working. So I know you don't like the framing, but it's a very human dynamic that we need to recognize in order to, we just need to understand reality for what it is if we're going to make any progress. But I would even go on to say, even if you don't want to accept that framing, that they're constantly on the losing end of our aggression.
They're on the losing end, but they, in most instances, have been the aggressors. Like October 7th was the catalyst to the latest round.
Wait, hold on. But again, but Joseph.
1920, 21, it was Nabi Musa riots, it was Hajimin al-Husseini agitating against Jews. All of that happened in a vacuum, right? Like there's nothing that led to any of that. That was all in a vacuum. But it's not me that's making you literally said we are the aggressors and we impose conditions which brutalize them and lead to more violence. And I'm saying that's a terrible framing.
No,
it's you that's coming up with this black and white framing of the conflict. I'm saying that we have won most of those conflicts. I agree with that. And we may have imposed conditions which have not been well received by the losing party, but that tends to be the outcome of most conflicts. The losing party is not happy with the conditions that are imposed on them. But it's your friend. You have this black and
wait, but these conditions are not. It's not that they try and then we impose these conditions. These are decisions, right? So Zionism from its early days was an attempt to establish some kind of a Jewish sovereignty on a land that was inhabited by other people. We have a long history of groups of people doing this, and every single time it was met with violence. Every single time. So when you start history at Nebi Musa riots, but that's after decades of us coming with an intention to be sovereign on land that was inhabited by others. And then when they reject partition, we're like, what do you mean? Why would they reject partition? That doesn't make any sense. We accepted
also inhabited by us, yes.
By what?
We were one of many parties that lived in this land, yes.
No.
That it was Jews
no.
And everybody else.
It's not like there was a continual presence of Jews here for thousands of years.
Yes.
But the stark increase of violence came with the Zionist movement very clearly. If you look at the people, I view it as a cell phone, but many try to share the list of all the attacks against Jews living on the land from like the 1500s. And you see an average of probably a few notable attacks every century. And then come the 20th century, and then you see dozens of attacks. And they try to point, it's like you see violence started prior to Zionism. True, all minority groups experienced violence where they lived. But very clearly Zionism, which was mass migration of one population, claiming land as their own, in every instance that's ever happened, that has led to violence. Partition, partition, we could see it as a good faith effort by the international community to try to find a fair solution. I could understand why we accepted it, but them rejecting it should have been expected. And then the consequence of their rejection is more expansion. And then instead of saying, you know what, we have our borders, let's work to find a way towards peace with Palestinians, we decided that for military purposes, we need to take the West Bank. And I understand the military justification, but then it didn't end there. We didn't say we're going to secure this and work until we could work with Palestinians so they have institutions that they could self-govern. We said, no. We control the West Bank under security pretense, but now we're going to move our citizens in and build settlements on more of their land. The same action that they still have a grievance with us until today, we continue to do. We continue to take more land and build more settlements. And sure enough, what happened? Terror attacks. And we're like, oh, you see, now we need more checkpoints. And you know what? As a consequence to terror, we're going to continue to build. We need to understand that what we did, the way we came here, claiming it for our own, to then just be accepted, that's not a realistic expectation. Rejection, just one last point. Rejection should be expected. Acceptance requires immense work. We have not done that immense work. We've barely scratched the surface to what it will take to get true acceptance. And that's what I'm advocating for. I'm not saying Jews need to leave, obviously. I live here with my family, but we need to do the work for them to accept us. We can't continue to oppress them until they one day accept us. And I'll give you all the time. I'll give you all the time you need.
I don't need. I'd rather have a backwards and forwards than a big monologue, because my monologues are very boring. So a couple of things. Your cell phone isn't the cell phone you think it is. The number of Jews that died was because we were a much smaller minority. As our population increases, yes, you're absolutely right. There was a reaction from the Muslim, largely the Muslim inhabitants, but also the Christians of the land. There was a pushback against Zionism. But all that tells you is that the more Jews were in the land, the larger those massacres were. When there were less Jews living in the land, proportionately, those massacres were smaller. Or it was like there was less Jews here, so less of us were killed. And as the population increased,
bro, that's not.
Like, of course it is, of course. So in 1517, when we were massacred in Al Khalil in Hebron, it was a small community. It was a small community of Jews living there.
I'm not even talking about the numbers of those kills. I'm talking about the numbers of coordinated attacks, the total numbers of attacks.
So I think the difference, the major difference, is the motivation behind the attacks. The attacks historically, we were the victims of other conflicts. Usually, the Mamluks fighting the Ottomans, and we were a victim. The Druze riot in the north, and they slaughtered us in south. And I love the Druze, but I'm pretty sure there was a Druze massacre in the 1800s of Jews in the north, and I agree with you. There was a reaction to Jewish national aspirations, but there were national aspirations of all minority peoples in these regions. The Kurds had national aspirations. The Christians had national aspirations, and the Jews were one of those parties. But no party has been met with such violence as the Jewish aspiration for self-determination in this land, and that's because of the religious significance of this land. It was almost as if we were going to Khaybar and trying to retake Khaybar back, as Khaybar used to be a Jewish city back in the day as well. And it's the religious aspect of it, which, Hajj al-Husseini, who led the conflict, was a deeply religious man. His battle cries were one of calling for jihad, calling for the Muslims to slaughter the Jews in the name of religion. And the religious aspect persists to this day. And it's because the idea of Jews having self-determination on this land is intolerable to many religious Muslims. Obviously not all religious Muslims, because many religious Muslims are accepting of Jewish national determination here, self-determination here. And so yeah, just to bring it back, I think your framing of just, it was fine, there was one or two massacres here and there throughout our history, but then all of a sudden there's an explosion with Zionism. No, there's been massacres of Jews continuously, and as the likelihood of Jews acquiring a state increased, that violence then increased in reaction to that. It was the very ideas that Jews shouldn't be sovereign here. Why is it that an Arab can come from anywhere in the Middle East, settle here and they're seen as Palestinian, but if a Jew comes here, they're a settler, as an example? So whether you're a Bosniak, a Kurd, a Masri, wherever your origins, you can come here and you're seen as a Palestinian living in Yehuda v'Shamron, as an example. But the minute a Jew does that, then there's a problem, because the opposition is to Jews, largely for religious reasons, having self-determination in Al-Ard al-Muqaddasa.
Again, we could talk more about the religious stuff. I just don't see what that leads to, aside from just acknowledging that there's religious aspects to it. But there's when we want to talk about solutions, you don't need to go deep. You need to understand like religious sites and how religious people feel about things. But fine, fair. Like there's just no disagreement. I just don't. It sounds like you want me to concede that there's a religious aspect to the conflict. Sure, it'll never be a focus of mine, because I don't think the solution comes from focusing on religion. It's understanding the grievances of both people, what rights they deserve, and how we can build institutions to protect their rights. Religion might interface with that here and there, but I think it's just a minor thing. So that's generally how I approach it. In terms of why can Palestinians visit the West Bank, is your expectation that Palestinians, that Jews will be treated with open arms visiting Palestinian neighborhoods the same way other Palestinians?
No. I wasn't clear with what I was saying there. So the Palestinians are made up of people from all over the Middle East, in terms of ancestry. And you can have someone whose grandparents are from Iraq. If they move to a hilltop outside of Ramallah, they're seen as an Arab, a Palestinian. But if an Arabic-speaking Jew moves from Iraq to that same hilltop, they're seen as a usurper of the land. And that's what the distinction
today.
The rejection of it's the rejection of the Jewishness. It's the Jewish. That's why I think you can't separate the religion from this conflict.
but they've been at war with the Jewish state and the Jewish people for 100 years. So I'm not sure why. Like, why are you?
That's my point.
No, but you could replace Jew with flying spaghetti monster, and then they would hate the flying spaghetti monster. People hate the people they're in conflict with. So, it's not, and the way we know it's not just Jew, because it's more so even an atheist Jew wouldn't be allowed to move there. We'd still be seen as part of a certain society. It's not. We should expect Palestinian society to be today the most anti-Semitic in the world. If they weren't, it should be weird, because when you're in conflict with the Jewish state and you're oppressed by Jewish individuals, you're going to grow up thinking there's a problem with Jews. So we shouldn't be surprised that they don't want Jews moving in. That's deeply offensive to them. You're trying to judge how Palestinians feel about Jews when they've been at war with the Jews for 100 years. It's just not the the time and place to judge.
Conflict. I'm saying the root of the conflict, because you framed it as Jewish aggression, and I'm saying the root of the conflict is the rejection, largely along religious lines, of Jews being autonomous, as Jews being a sovereign power on this land in particular. It's not Jewish aggression. When the early Jews came here and started building up agricultural projects and draining swamps and doing all the things that you've been indoctrinated to believe in your textbooks, that you've read the same textbooks as me. When we came and did all that, we weren't being aggressive. We were building up livelihood. We were building up kibbutzim. We were building farms. We were building buildings with our hands. We weren't being aggressive. The aggression came from the rejection of what that could lead to. Jewish self-determination. If we'd been a Muslim initiative, it wouldn't have been met by the same hostility.
You're leaving out the parts of early Zionism that were inherently aggressive, like displacing people from their homes when they lived there for many generations, like the fact that we coerced Jewish farm owners from hiring Arabs who they had worked with for many years. It was a movement by Jews, for Jews. We came here with a patronizing attitude towards the locals, and we came in claiming it for our own. No matter how you want to spin that, to think that the local population will just be okay with it, I don't think that's a realistic expectation. And I don't think it's as simple as saying they just have a problem with Jews. And again, the reason for this, we have hundreds of examples of populations arriving en masse, and every single time it's met with violence. So to think here it's just because of Judaism, to me, that's just not coherent.
But did the Turks meet the same violence? The Ottomans, the Mamluks.
Wait, hold on. So wait. I said massive amounts of people claiming it for their own. You do have many instances throughout history where empires changed hands, and the people, there was some resistance, but the people accepted it. They didn't actually care who was ruling them, as long as it generally didn't affect their life day to day. But when you have a situation where it's people coming in, mass amounts of people, it's what's described as settler colonialism. It's also similar to colonialism, but it's a very specific human dynamic which causes people to act a certain way. So it's not the same as an empire switching hands. That's just not the same human dynamic. And I think we need to understand this. No, you laugh, but it's very different. But first of all conquerors, Ottoman conquerors were met with violence. They were met with violence. It's just that was generally the empire fighting their empire. The peasant didn't feel like they had too much skin in the game. So if one empire takes over another empire, the people just accepted that. That's not what we're talking about here. That doesn't describe Zionism. That doesn't describe massive amounts of it. It's just that's apples to oranges. But we do have
the reaction of the Palestinians, the reaction of the Arabs in the land was different to the Ottomans because the times had changed. There'd been an emergence of self-determination. There'd been an emergence of nation states. and there was the emergence of a party that was pushing for one of those nation states in that land. That's why the reception was different to when it was under the Ottomans, because the peasants were powerless back then. And so it's absolutely not what you were saying, whether they would accept. They had no choice in the matter. What could a peasant living in a village in Allah, what then became Ramallah, what could a peasant in Allah do against the mighty Ottoman Empire or the Mamluks?
No, you're right.
They shared the same fate as the Jews that were living in
Tehran. You're right. We don't disagree, and that's why we see when there's a minority group that's oppressed, they often will just accept their oppression because it's a survival instinct to just not. If you are so small and there's nothing you could do, and we see this. I've just looked at many. I try to compare different instances of oppression, look for patterns, and see how people react. Because humans, more than we're religious, more than we believe in some kind of political ideology, we're first and foremost human, and we respond similarly to similar dynamics. So when we see humans being a minority group, a small minority within a larger population, they're not gonna engage in violence to try to liberate themselves, because then they just get destroyed. But when we see a large population being replaced by another large population, every instance that I've ever found of that, there was violence that ensued. So it's oversimplistic to just say it's Jews and Muslims when there's a very specific human dynamic of two large populations clashing, fighting over limited resources. They both feel like it's either us or them, and violence ensues. I mean, that's just pretty consistent throughout history. So I think it leads us to the wrong conclusions if we just think that this is for religious reasons. Can you make the case that had Palestinians been secular, entirely secular? Well, when we showed up, they were much more secular than they are today. They've been radicalized for the past 100 years. It was actually one of the most secular, and still is. Palestinian society is way more secular than like the Gulf states. And 100 years ago, it was certainly one of the most secular in the Middle East. But and to me, this is just another data point how struggle and conflict and needing to find solace with whatever institution existed, which was often the mosque, made Palestinians much more Islamist and much more fundamentalist. It came through struggle, it came through conflict. But I don't think there's any solution focusing solely on religion. We need to understand the very real human dynamics. So right now, there's a very real grievance Palestinians have. They still haven't accepted the fact that we have taken half their land, and you could say it's not their land, it's our land, but in their eyes, more than half their land, and have continuously oppressed them for decades. To think that this approach is simply going to one day figure itself out, I don't think we should just assume that. And to think that the only reason why they don't like us is Islam, again, is the wrong conclusion. We need to resolve their grievance and find a just solution. And a just solution is not just for them. It requires us. It requires us to not have an injustice imposed on us. That's possible. That's what we need to be talking about. But if we convince ourselves that it's religion, then it leaves us with nowhere to go. What's the solution? Get them to convert? Not only do I think that the way I'm framing this is more accurate, but I think it gives us a world filled with options for how to move forward. If you just think it's a Muslim problem, okay, so what do we do?
I think it's a very Western way of looking at the conflict. I share much more in common with a religious Palestinian from Gaza than I do with a secular atheist in London or New York. In the sense that we wake up, the first words that come out of our mouth are religious words. We prepare our bodies in religious ways. We go to the masjid or the Beit Knesset and we worship the Creator. We're particular with which food we put into our mouth. We're particular with what we say before we eat that food, what we say after we've eaten the food. We live a very different existence to someone who is without religion. And we live in one of the most religious parts of the world, which is why I referenced Syria at the beginning. The reason that the Druze are being butchered is because they belong to a minority religion, which is intolerable to many of the henchmen of Giuliani, which is intolerable. So there's open talk of ethnically cleansing the Druze from the land and then marching on Jerusalem and driving the Jews from the land. Ironically, or not ironic, it's not by coincidence that these are religious minorities. And so I don't think, in the same way, you can't look to Lebanon and say, let's solve it, let's build institutions, let's find a solution to any conflict we have in Lebanon without factoring in religion. And Jerusalem is even more problematic than Beirut. What significance does Beirut have to the Christians, the Shia, or the Sunni? No significance. What significance does Quds, Yerushalayim, have to both Islam and Judaism? Huge, huge significance. And so the aggression that the Jews faced was because of where we were establishing or re-establishing our state. And that's why I fundamentally disagree with how you frame the conflict and the solutions that you look to build. Those solutions would maybe work in Northern Ireland, but they're not going to work in a religious land. You can't just ignore centuries of religious intolerance and huge and theological understandings of where each other sit within that society. Like, Jews are one of the Dhimma. We are supposed to pay the jizya until we're Saghirun. We're not supposed to be in control of Masjid al-Aqsa. That contradicts the theology. And so I just don't, we're just going around in circles here, but I just fundamentally disagree with your analysis where you can just remove religion and just build institutions of coexistence when we share and we all sing Kumbaya and get along. Religion is the elephant in the room here.
So we'll open it up to audience questions and stuff, but institutions of coexistence is not the correct framing. Institution solves the problems you're talking about. Your concern, and I think it's a legitimate concern, is that there's a calling to dismantle Israel, and for many reasons you don't want Israel to be dismantled. But one of the main ones, like most Jews living on the land, is that currently Israel provides you and your family safety. And you're not sure how that safety could be provided for you without Israel. I get it. I think out of all the Hasbara arguments, that's the only one that should be talking about. All the other ones, in my opinion, are just bullshit for the most part. Now, but that's what institutions do. They're meant to protect you and your family. So they're not just institutions of coexistence. When I talk about institutions, it's about protecting the rights of the people living on the land. Now, there's many ways to construct it. It's about us having fully shared institutions from the river to the sea. That concerns many people. Fine. So we should help them build their institutions and allow them to be sovereign. But having 6 million people living between the river and the sea who are neither equal nor sovereign is immoral and unsustainable. So we need to find a situation where either they share, we're protected by the same institutions, or they have their own institutions that can protect them. It's not kumbaya. I think I'm trying to be very pragmatic here and just really focus on what's important. And as I said, I do think we need to understand religious belief and how that interfaces with these institutions for sure, but I just don't see that as the core, and I don't see how you get a solution from focusing on religion. I'll give you the last thought on this, and then we'll bring some people on.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to, because I can see people getting very angry at me in the comments. I think that what you're describing for me is the Band-Aid, because it doesn't deal with the fundamental problem. So let's say you do that. You establish there's a Palestinian state, and its capital is East Jerusalem, yeah? And they just say, they go with the Olmo deal. The triangle goes over to the Palestinians, Gush goes over to the Israelis, but basically there's a Palestinian state created. Institutions are built up. They have complete autonomy, sovereignty over those territories, rights afforded. What you don't get, what you haven't solved with that is that Israel is still in Jerusalem. Israel is still in Haifa. Israel is still here as a Jewish state. And as long as there's a Jewish state here, unless there is a change from the other camp, it will not be tolerated by the wider Muslim world, by the wider Arab world, And truthfully, by the
I don't accept that. I mean, I think that's something that we tell ourselves in order to feel better about us not doing anything. But
so why did the conflict continue after 48? From 48 to 67, why did the conflict continue?
Because we were still just a few decades out of us displacing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and people don't get over a catastrophe that quickly. I mean, that makes sense. We did while Palestinian citizens of Israel were still living under military rule until the 60s. So to think that overnight, it's, oh yeah, we won, we displaced them, it should be good. Maybe in some situations. That's not how it worked out, and it shouldn't be surprising that it didn't. And then in 67, we had an opportunity to help them have a sovereign state, but we decided to be sovereign over it ourselves for eternity. But saying the wider Arab world, let's talk about Arab leadership, because they're currently the decision makers. You have the Arab Peace Initiative that's been proposed, I think, on 6 to 7, maybe 8 occasions now, that recognizes Israel's right to exist. Israel has a form of peace with most of its neighbors, Jordan, Egypt, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. Syria is interested. Wait, hold on.
Do you speak to anyone from these countries?
But
even the Emiratis. I love the Emiratis. They hate us.
That's fine. Thankfully, their leaders are being pragmatic and understanding that we're here to stay. The decision of the leaders is essential, unless you could point to a country that's truly unstable and is about to be replaced by a leader that's completely going to shift their tune on Israel. But right now, we have accepted. No, they're not at high risk of being overturned. But wait, why are you laughing? We very clearly.
That's not what analysis coming out of the country.
Okay, we hold on. We have an Egyptian that we'll bring on stage in a moment, Omar. But we have been accepted by most of the Arab world in terms of at least the leadership. That is so significant. And we just make it seem like, nope, they all hate us. No, the majority of the Arab world has accepted us. The PA has accepted us. Back in '89, we've had security cooperation with them for decades now. It's one of the reasons why we haven't had a third intifada, most likely. And even
cooperation for their benefit.
And even Hamas has shown. I mean, things have changed now, but up until October 7th, on multiple occasions, have shown an interest in negotiating with us and have shown that they're warming up to 2 states, even Hamas. So I don't accept this, that they'll never accept. It's very hard to accept giving your land to an enemy population.
Hamas are not warming up to, this is the delusion. I mean, you're delusional to think that Hamas are warming up to 2 states.
They are. Well, now I don't think now it's relevant to talk about. But no, we've seen. I think it was Nomad who's here. Nomad actually sent me a bunch of articles all the way back from 2008 of showing Hamas's evolution and how they started to warm up to 2 states. They changed their charter to kind of acknowledge 2 states. They tried to negotiate a 10-year truce with us when
what they recognized was that they would.
I know. I've
Palestinians having sovereignty over an area, but they never gave up on having all the.
I know. I read their charter. I know their charter, but do you not see that as an official shift? If you actually look at sentiment, I think it was probably record high under Oslo when the majority of Palestinians did accept Israel's right to exist. But
you're right. You're right. The Hamas are for the 2-state solution.
No. If they could press a button,
like a delusional, mate. Hamas are not warming up to a 2-state solution.
They have
fundamentalist organization.
They have been for years. They've been warming up to 2 states for years. They modified their charter to kind of hint at it. They offered a 10-year truce to Israel when they got rejected, when they got elected, which we outright rejected. They've actually come out to offer a truce with us on many occasions, which we outright rejected every single time. We refused to negotiate with them. We put a brutal siege on them, and then we're like, oh my God, they were violent towards us. Well, when you don't give people peaceful means to achieve their goals, violence ensues. That doesn't mean I support it. It doesn't mean it's justified.
Their goal is the destruction of Israel. That is their goal. You are delusional if you think otherwise.
We have seen. Wait, no, hold on. Okay.
But that is the goal of Hamas. Their objective is definitionally. It's why they
Okay.
were set up.
Wait. Joseph, in all politics, all leaders, all politicians often set a goal, and then they'll often meet halfway in the middle. They'll make concessions. We saw this.
Hamas will make pragmatic concessions, but
We
their
we
objective
we
is the destruction of Israel.
No, it actually is. There are concessions.
So you're saying that their objective is not the destruction of Israel, Hamas.
Let me hold on. Let me give you some examples. Nelson Mandela, we have a video of him singing "Kill All the Boers." He then ended up being a brilliant peacemaker in South Africa. The IRA, at a certain point, we're saying we won't stop until we remove all Brits from Ireland. That was their position at one time. What happened? We had the PLO, used to be more extreme than Hamas. Now we've had a security cooperation with them. What happened? We have been, wait, hold on. We have been, the US has been at war with Al-Qaeda for decades, and now we're normalizing ties with Al-Shara. What happened? There's a very constant throughout history, and people who say things one day, with not all too much trouble, will shift their position if enough time passes, if the conditions on the ground change, or if they feel it's needed for their own self-preservation. And let me just give you a very clear example. Trump, here's an example that's not at all triggering. That might be easier to understand. Trump says he wants to deport X amount of immigrants, right? But in reality, he knows he could only deport 10% of that. You could say, but you see, his goal is to deport all of them because he explicitly said so. But often people set goals and say things, and they'll often make concessions when they feel like they have to. This is just a constant through history. So yes, even Hamas can be worked with, can be negotiated with. We've just refused. And we've been trying to defeat them militarily for 2 years at a very severe cost, and they still control 40% of Gaza. And
is there anything that the Palestinians would do that you wouldn't take responsibility for? Did they have any agency in this conflict at all? Do Hamas have any agency, or Hamas just a product of Israel? Israeli aggression.
So hold on. Wait.
It's nothing to do with their religious beliefs. It's nothing to do with Ikhwan Muslimin. It's nothing to do with establishing a global caliphate. It's none of that. It's nothing to do with destroy. It's all a reaction to us and the terrible.
Wait. Hold on. No. That's just that's a straw man, my guy. I'm sorry. Did I not condemn October 7th? Have I not said on many occasions
you justified it. You said it was a reaction to our oppression.
No. That's not what I said. I said I'm not justifying this. I'm not saying it's okay. But again, when you impose certain conditions on people, you increase or decrease the likelihood of certain responses. Do you know what I wish Hamas would have done? I wish they would have said, you know what? We have no way to defeat Israel militarily. We're not going to sacrifice our own people. We're done fighting. We recognize Israel's right to exist. We're not going to invest money into building tunnels. We're going to build infrastructure, and we're going to, over time, convince Israel to end the siege by showing that we pose no threat to them. Obviously, I wish they would have done it that way.
But
obviously,
they didn't do that. Why didn't they do that? Because of us, is how you've explained it so far.
No, because that is very rarely how people respond to oppression. So I think in some instances, you very well might have a militant
So you are saying it's because of our oppression?
It's the conditions imposed.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you remove the agency from them and place it on us.
No. To say somebody no. Because this no. Look, agency is a very important concept in society when everybody is of an in-group, and you need to hold people accountable for acting as outliers from what are the societal norms. We recognize people have agency. It's a very good societal belief that helps people make the right decisions. It allows us to justify accountability for bad actions. But let's say a situation where somebody was severely abused their entire life from the time they were young, and they end up growing up and killing their abuser. That person would go to court And the defense would very clearly explain how the fact that they were abused, how they were abused their whole life led to them turning on their abuser, because that's often what humans do. And the court most likely would take that into consideration. Does that mean that person doesn't have any agency? No. But it does mean that the conditions imposed on them lead to the likeliness of certain actions. It's the same thing now when we look at this as, so that's on an in-group level, but when you look at it between populations, you could look at it similarly. Hamas could have made a different decision, but in the conditions we imposed on them, we increased the likelihood of some actions and decreased the likelihood of other actions. So our responsibility for imposing on them conditions that are going to increase the likelihood for violence, yes, we need to take accountability for that. The same way the abuser that abused the child and then got attacked would need to take accountability. It's not about stripping agency. It's about grappling with reality for what it is and understanding that people respond to certain environments. I think this isn't even about blame. It's about identifying the root of problems to get to solutions. When I talk bad about Israel, I'm not demonizing Israel for the sake of Israel, for the sake of demonizing Israel. It's because I believe that there's no solution, no feasible solution that doesn't require massive change in our approach from Israel's side. So obviously I'm going to talk about what I think that change should be. Are you frozen? Or are you stunned? I think we lost Joseph. Okay. Omar, do you still want to come on? And Joseph, if you could hear this, just leave and come back. All right. So the question now is, this is a question for the community. I'm gonna stop the stream. I'm gonna start winding down for the evening. We could move this to the chill room. What we did was we created 2 rooms. One called chill room, the other bring the popcorn. Joseph, welcome back. Feel free to raise your hand. The chill room, there's no fighting, certainly no personal attacks, none of that. If you want to fight, you need to do it in the bring the popcorn room, okay? That's the new policy. So what we're going to do is we'll end the stream in a few moments, and then we're going to break it up into 2 rooms. But Joseph, yeah, welcome back. Did you hear what I said, or?
I could not, I'm really sorry. So apologies. Just got the internet back.
Okay, well, I don't feel like remaking the case, but
we can agree.
Yeah, watch it back though, because whatever, we'll find other times to talk. In short, yes, they have agency, but we need to understand how our actions increase or decrease the likelihood of certain actions on their part. In short, okay.
I agree with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're gonna. I don't know if you want to stick around. I'm personally gonna hop off, but we're gonna move it into call it an after party here in the chill room and the bring the popcorn room. So, are you sticking around? Are you sticking around, Joseph?
For a few minutes, because I know some people were cursing me in the comments.
Okay, fine. So does anybody want to hop on stage and ask Joseph questions? Who was cursing you? That's not okay. We don't accept that.
Omar, they're not cursing me. No one actually swore.
Okay.
I think I was called a grifter. I called
a Badawi.
Old man.
You're a Badawi. I don't know what a Badawi is.
We're sharing our own criticism, as always.
Okay. Omar.
Welcome, Joseph. How are you?
Well, Hashem.
Long time not to talk.
It's been a while.
So I wanted to divert a little bit and go back to what you said about Syria, and this is a religious conflict. It's a religious war between the Druze and the Sunnis, right?
I believe it's yes, just as the Alawites have been hit on the coast, I believe the Druze have been hit because they are a minority religion which is intolerant to fundamentalists like Daesh, like Jabhat al-Nusra, like to these Chechen and Uzbek jihadis that are fighting there.
Before we go through the entire history, then why tell me why people like Letha Bal'ous, who was another Druze leader respected within his community, were trying to achieve a ceasefire with the government, the Syrian government, and it was Hijri, who's Israeli backed, and the Druze community actually do not align with them, and he keeps losing support day over day, is the one who rejected it. And also tell me where was religion in the start of this conflict on July, was it 11th or the 12th?
11th was when they kidnapped the merchant,
Yeah.
So I believe that the hostility between the Bedouin and the Druze is religiously based. I believe it is an intolerance of each other, or certainly from the more fundamentalist Muslims of the Druze. And I think you only need to look at the language that's been used. So when they kidnap 79 Druze women, they're calling them Sabaya. And you'll know the religion better than I do, but that's a female captive that you take in war. And there's videos of them taking them.
What about the captives that were held hostage by the Druze in the whole room when they said, "We have your women"? They were telling the Syrian government, "We have your women."
And so
isn't that what the Druze did?
So one of the things I'm going to be very careful because I don't want to defend something that I'm not 100% certain of. So what I've been told by Druze is that has been the historical way that they've made trades. When the Muslims would kidnap their people, they would take Bedouin and trade them back, and there was an exchange that always happened. So that's how that's been explained to me. But it's a conflict I'm not close to.
So this is why they killed them then. They killed an 80-year-old lady because they were using her as currency for exchange.
Omar, so what I would say is I've seen video after video, like massacre after massacre of Druze. When I'm on these silly web apps, Omi TV, I put out a video today and it's just been blocked by YouTube, and I'm on here instead of trying to get it relisted. Well, I just bumped into an ordinary Syrian, and he started showing me gleefully videos of dead Druzim who he called traitors, like children, adults. It didn't matter. We all saw the video.
I can show you actually more of these videos on the other side. This is what happens in a conflict.
What I was gonna say is, I would never say that there have almost certainly been atrocities that Jews have carried out in Gaza, like without a doubt, because this is a war, and in war atrocities are carried out. The
genocide in Gaza isn't what I'm here to speak because I've already tried this. We went down this path I think 2 months ago, and it was proven non-fruitful. I don't want to have a repeat. I'm just like we were thinking specifically about right now. Religion, like the religious aspect, and how religion, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they seem to focus on Islam. And I'm sorry I cut you off. I don't want to speak about this because you've already done it, and I don't think it's beneficial for the listeners. So we like going back to Syria. You're saying it has religious aspects. It's inherently religious, while from July 11th until right now, we've seen that it's not about religion at all. It's about, even when you mention the Bedouin, but the Bedouin come from a tribal mentality. They never come from an Islamic fundamental mentality. So the reason that the Bedouins actually started pouring and coming from multiple other cities into Suwaida is because of what the Druze were doing, and because they were offered a ceasefire and they rejected it. And he says, okay, since right now Israel has bombed Damascus, Israel has been bombing the Syrian government, and the Syrian government withdrew from Suwaida. It's time for us to step up, and they've done. And this is why these massacres are happening on both sides. You've seen videos of Sunni Muslims who have their eyes gouged out by the Druze, and those that were beheaded.
So that's what I was trying to say was, I agree that atrocities will have been carried out by Druze, just as I agree that atrocities would have been carried out by Jews post October the 7th. And when one side suffers a trauma, individuals from that camp will lash out. And so,
wait, so do you understand my point about agency now? It's true, we have agency, but when we suffer enough trauma, some will lash out. I think that's
if someone carries out a war crime, be they from the Druze camp, the Bedouin camp, from the Jewish camp, from the Palestinian camp, they are still responsible for that. And so I have every confidence. I feel very confident in saying that I've seen some of those videos. I've seen what alleged to happen, and I'm sure there will be some of those which are true and factual, and that's what's happened. What I'm saying is those events took place in Sueda. It wasn't that the Druze were going out to the eastern Syria and attacking. What's the big tribe? The Al-Qaeda. I forgot the name of the tribe. It's one of the big Bedouin tribes. It's very close to Jelani. Al-Qaeda. Someone in the chat will know. It's not my area. I don't know that much about Syrian politics. But that aside, they're bussing in Bedouin from all over Syria, many of them with Daesh patches, with all manner of different factions that have been fighting in Syria for quite some time now, since the civil war. And they've been bussed into Sueda, and they're attacking the Druze in Sueda. Why? So let's take your argument, Omar, which I'm sure you're going to, I'm not sure, I'm assuming you're going to say that the reason that there is conflict there is because there's a separatist movement which are trying to split off from Syria, and the government pulled out, and this is why the Bedouin are stepping in, because they don't believe that the Jews should be able to create a separate.
You seem to have convinced yourself with it. I don't think I need to speak anymore.
What I'm saying is I'm not ignorant to your arguments, but what I'm saying in counter to that is these people are coming into Sueda, and the people that you're seeing in the video that have been attacked, killed, etc., the overwhelming majority of those are fighters that have come into Sueda to kill Druze. Would you agree to that, or are you saying that the Druze are leaving?
Yeah. If I'm living in Tel Aviv, and some people in I don't know, in Haifa or in some other place are killing my family, I'm taking my gun, I'm gonna go kill these people. This is what happens in tribal warfare.
How many Bedouin are in Sueda? It's like 90% Druze.
Okay, and so there's a portion of the minorities. Is that what you're trying to say?
No,
you're pushing the minority.
I'm saying it's the Druze that are the minority that are oppressed. It's the Druze that are getting pushed out of every neighborhood.
Then why doesn't a more prominent Druze leader, Lathab al-Ous, and the other one who I actually forgot his name, MB, if you can remind me, not accepting the ceasefire and accept the legitimacy of the Al-Shabaab government? Why is it only people who are backed by Israel? The Druze are only backed by Israel, and it's not even the Druze. It's Hijri and his forces. Yeah, Jabur.
So you're saying it's Israel or it's Hijri? Whose fault is it?
No. So I won't say it's Israel. It's obviously Hijri's, and because he's also another maniac. But when you have, because I don't know even why Israel is supporting Hijri. We've seen how there was a warehouse that was allegedly was going to be used for Hezbollah. They were backed by Iran. So these same guys who are agitating the Syrian conflict scene and the Syrian people and killing people left or right creating more conflict. Even when they were giving a ceasefire and when they were giving justice, these same people who were they're trying to continue the Captagon industry that was left over by Assad. These same people that keep having clashes and more conflict happening on the Jordanian border, which could drive more issues between Syria and Jordan. These are the same people Israel is supporting, and they're a quote-unquote minority. And this is what they have to bomb the Ministry of Defense and the presidential the Parliament building and the presidential palace because of them.
So a simple question for you, though, Omar, is if you don't think it's religiously based, why is it that every religious minority in the Middle East, let's say your argument's true, and under history the Jews are pushing for separatism, which is why the Sunni forces from all over Syria entered Suwaida and started massacring the Druze. Let's say your argument's right, it's because they're going for separatism, it's because they're going for their own thing. Why is it when any religious minority tries to assert any sort of autonomy in lands which Sunni Muslims believe, or I just say Muslims, Shia Muslim as well, believe should be under Islam, why are they met with extreme violence?
Why did the white people hold black and slaves? Why did the Anglo-Saxons kill natives?
Can you give me an example?
No. I'm telling you right now. Why did some Europeans kill other Europeans? Why did Hitler want to kill all the Jews? This is why you should love other, because it was my land. It was my land before it was yours. Because it was my land, and you came and took it, by force.
Who did you take it off? Who did Umar ibn al-Khattab?
The Christians.
We can play that game.
The Christians, I'm telling you, who've taken it from the Christians, we let you in. You're expelled from Jerusalem. We took it from the Christians and let you in. No. This is why I'm telling you. You need to have a history. You need to have a history you need to have a book. I'm sorry, on revisionist history, and you can title it and say how we can use history to lie about religion. But you went in Jerusalem. You went in the old city. You were nowhere next to Alaska Mosque or the Temple Mount or whatever, and we were the ones letting you in.
You let us into Quds.
And
you
both
let us into Yerushalayim, and Omar the second kicked us out.
Guys, real quick, guys, I'm gonna end the stream. So we're gonna, Omar, if you want to continue to host, you're welcome to. Alternatively, we bring it into the chill room and bring the popcorn, and we could separate this into two spaces depending on what energy people want. But for those watching this on YouTube, if you want to join, the conversation I imagine will be going for another few hours, as it always does. So I'm dropping a link in chat. You can find it in my bio or in the description. I hope you join. And with that, signing off. Tomorrow, we're actually speaking to Samer Sinjawali. I wish I had a better bio for him, but he's called him a Palestinian politician and advocate for peace. So we're going to have him on tomorrow at 7. Joseph, thank you for joining us, and for everyone else who submitted questions and hopped on stage. Justin, Omar, thank you so much. And with that, wrapping up the stream.